Okay, I'd call the committee to order. Ask the clerk to take the roll.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. We docketed a lot of bills last week, and we didn't get to about half of them, and a lot of them were taken by. So this week, what I tried to do was limit the number of bills that would come up, and we've had some problems already. So Senator Obenshain's not here. He's got a post-election audit, so I'd like to take, there are two other bills that deal with the same issue, 370 and Senator Chase, your bill 605. And so it's 370, 390, and 605. Without objection, I'd like to go by for the day. So when Mark Obenshain's here, we'll do all three of them at the same time. Okay, and then the second thing is Senator Stanley's Bill 85. I understand they're going to take up all of the Martinsville bills to do with a reversion in the local government committee, and so I would like a motion to re-refer that bill to local government.
So moved. Second.
Okay. Do we need a recorded vote on that? Okay. Open the roll, please.
Ayes 13, no 0.
Okay. The third thing has to do with the first reading constitutional amendments. You know, under the Constitution of Virginia, and amendments have to be agreed to before and then after the general election. So the next election will be next year. So generally what we've done is continue these the first reading constitutional amendments, which are number 3, 7, not Senate Joint Resolution 3, 7, 19, 20, 32, and 36. Now, but before we do that, Senator Reeves tells me he's got a substitute for Senate Joint Resolution 19, and I'd like to get that in the...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brooks, I think you have the amendment in the nature of substitute, and to the members of the committee, this substitute will align with Delegate Tran's bill in the House as we go through the process. And Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'd like to state that this bill was the result of a lot of work from the JLC, and I know we had two family members affected by this bill that were going to testify today, and I thank you for your explanation of the process. And so we're not just getting rid of the bill, but by protocol, we have to hear the bill next year, so we just want to get it in the right posture, and I just want to thank the JLC and those members that were going to testify today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
People came to testify to that bill. Thank you very much. You've got a motion on the substitute.
I do.
Is the substitute before us? Is it online or? Okay. Do I have a motion on the substitute? Well, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor of adopting the substitute?
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay. Then I would like a motion to continue all of these resolutions, carry over Senate Joint Resolution 3, 7, 19, 20, 32, and 36.
Mr. Chairman, I would so move that they be carried over for the year.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to carry over. Clerk, please open the roll.
Mr. Rule, you got it. Ayes 15, no 0.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, after that, we have Senator Hangers. You're the first person on the docket.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Senate Bill 283 concerns a proposed referendum on the movement or not movement of the Augusta County Courthouse, and I do have a substitute that's been drawn, Mr. Chairman, if that could
Do you have
be
the
adopted.
substitute, Brooks?
Mr. Chairman, yes, it's online right now.
It's online? Okay, the substitute's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, the substitute is before us. Or no, all in favor of adopting the substitute, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the substitute's before us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. You know, occasionally we all work for the betterment of the full Commonwealth, but occasionally we get a situation that's important to us in the general area we represent, and the others perhaps are not members here are not as familiar with it. In this particular instance, I think the chair, Senator Deeds, is very familiar because he practices in this area and has an adjoining district. But some of you, I'd just like to refresh you all on what has happened or share with you what has happened over several years. There was a referendum, and by the time this proposed referendum comes about, it will have been 6 years. Our state code specifies that a referendum can be held every 10 years. The circumstance in Augusta County and specifically the city of Stanton, and I think most of you all have been there. We've had our annual retreat twice in the city of Stanton. There's been a great effort to preserve the history, and it's become a great little city, well visited by lots of tourists. But the courthouse, it's an old courthouse, and it is a problem. The Augusta County Board of Supervisors has maintained the property well, but it has deficiencies. It's not large enough to meet the need. It has security issues, and so it has things that are going to go out beyond what can be done on in that current building. In the referendum, the last referendum in 2016, it was not clear on the referendum the cost implications and what was going to have to be done in the city. And there was a referendum on whether it should be moved to the county, which has now located all of its offices on the perimeter of Stanton in the location of Verona, or leave it in Stanton. There was a vote, and it actually was overwhelming to leave it in Stanton. And Mr. Chairman, I voted for that.
It was about 2-1, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was about 2-1. I favored leaving it in Stanton. Actually, I still do, if that could be accommodated, leave it in Stanton. The problem has occurred in that the supervisors then began to put together a plan to do it in Stanton, but it ran into conflict with the properties that were adjacent with the historical concerns of the community, and we have a very active historical society, and I understand, and actually we all benefit from saving those buildings, but the Plan A where they had options on buildings did not materialize because there was support against the plan because of the use and the impact it would have on the history there. There was another plan that failed to cut the mustard, I guess you'd say, and then the final plan that the supervisors advanced was in conjunction with the city of Stanton, whereby adjacent, well, actually across the street property that's owned by a bank was to be acquired, and the city of Stanton was going to be a part of that in terms of helping facilitate that, and so that the cost would be affordable. As it turned out, the bank was not for sale. The county did not have the ability to exercise eminent domain, and so the price tag on it was just like, we don't want to sell it, so we're going to put a price on it that you can't afford, and didn't make sense for the taxpayers. More recently, a deal was tried to be structured, and I have here the former mayor of Stanton, lives in Stanton, Delegate Avoli, who is also carrying this identical bill on the House side, where we've come to a consensus that to move this forward, we have to have permission to have another referendum. It's also been, the importance of this has been heightened by the current chief judge there of the circuit has issued a show cause saying you can't piddle around anymore, you've got to get this done, you got to do it. So that's the current situation we have. Now, with the way the bill is constructed, it would require, of course, passage here, and a referendum could be held in November, but in order to get there, we would put the facts in front of the taxpayers very clearly at least 2 months prior to the referendum for a plan and the cost to go to Augusta County, a plan and the cost to keep it in Stanton. That would be clear with architectural drawings so that the voters could make an informed decision, the voters of Augusta County, informed decision about whether or not it makes sense. There's no question about it. Something has to happen. It will not happen, in my opinion, without this push from legislation to allow the voters to take another look at it. So that essentially is it. If the referendum passes, the language in here in the substitute, then the judge could issue an order that they would have to move forward promptly in execution of the plan. I've dealt with this before, Senator Deeds. You're familiar with the courthouse in Lexington. It was dear to everybody's heart, but I had to build a new one down the street, so we had to have some authorizing legislation to do that. This is similar. The thing that's different here is we need this to revisit. The circumstance has changed, and it needs to be revisited now rather than in another 4 years.
Senator Hanger, is there precedent for holding the referendum before the 10 years is up?
Is there a
Is
precedent?
there precedent?
Well, actually, I guess in this, there, legislative, in Lexington, you may recall, the referendum was voted down, and I carried a bill to do it anyway, and nobody cared, actually, because it was just moving it down the street after the fact. But the referendum was voted down initially, and then I carried a bill to go ahead and authorize them to move it across an alley and go ahead and build it. And they did, and it was very much needed. So I'm not aware of a precedent. I'm also not aware of a circumstance like this where the supervisors have been put in this box.
Well, the show cause the judge issued says the building, he says it's insecure, out of repair, or otherwise pose a danger to the health, welfare, and safety of court employees or the public. Out of repair, I'm wondering how much annually Augusta County pays to upkeep that building.
The Chairman, I'm sure the county managers here and 3 members of the Board of Supervisors who I think want to speak briefly, at least a couple of them do. From my being in there, it is well maintained. One of the issues is just the structure, the bathroom, where they have tried to put a private bath for the judge, but the judge sometimes has to go to the basement with the family of the accused to when they take a break. So, and you can't fix that on that lot. So they're going to have to do something. And Mr. Chairman, I won't take too much time. I would like to allow, with the scarce time we do have, at least a supervisor or the county manager to come forward, whoever would want to speak to this. County Manager, Tim Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Chairman Deed. My name is Tim Fitzgerald. I'm the County Administrator for Augusta County. Pleased to speak to you today about this important bill for Augusta County. I won't repeat a lot of what Senator Hanger had to say, but I will say that in the past couple years, Augusta County spent $1.2 million trying to do exactly what the voters asked us to do in 2016, and that was to look at building in downtown Stanton. I sent each one of you a little memo, a little background on this situation, and you'll see in that memo that we've actually looked at 3 different options downtown. The first option was property that we already own, that we have a general district building there. It's an old county building. We looked at using that property and demolishing that building, creating a new courts complex there. The trick there is it sits right above a creek in a floodplain. And this past year in the city of Stanton, you may recall, there are 2 major flood events downtown. And that showed us that it was not a good idea to spend taxpayers' dollars to build that building right above the floodplain. You can certainly engineer anything and spend as much money as you'd like to get it up out of the floodplain, but it was not a good decision at the time. So the Board of Supervisors moved away from that idea, and they went to an expansion project of our 1901 courthouse, which is across the street. You also have a map in your email from me on that. That was in conjunction with the discussion with the Stanton City Council, and at that time the majority of the council indicated some support for looking at that. So the county went and we spent $100,000 on options for those properties. And we had options on all those adjacent properties in order to build a renovated circuit court. So that's what we worked on there. It didn't come through. The historic group decided not to go with that project. So then we went to the Union Bank building, and fortunately we were able in 2020 to have general legislation that would allow us to go across the street. Before that, we had no ability to do that. We appreciate the option to do that. But when we started talking to Union Bank, they priced a building at $8 million for a building that's assessed at $2 million. We didn't have eminent domain authority. So
They're still making
Okay.
presentation.
we didn't have eminent domain authority, so we had asked the city of Stanton to do so, and they did not want to do that. So we're here before you to give the citizens a chance, another chance to look at what's the true cost of building in the city, what's the true cost of building in the county, and to help make that decision as to where they want to spend their money. So with that, I'll wrap it up and let others speak.
Are there others? Okay.
Committee, Senator Deeds, good to see you again. Had some prepared remarks, but I will make it quicker than that. because they've said just about everything.
Just identify yourself. I know you, but
I'm sorry. I'm Tom Sheets, citizen of Augusta County.
You're the mayor.
Look, I support this legislation. I was very active in trying to keep the courts in Stanton. Very active. To me, it was all about money. The people in the county, it was about money. The people in the city, it was about history. But it's the county's courts. So here we are again. I did not like the fact that it was talked about of redoing or not redoing, but disregarding the referendum. The people spoke. I am in favor for the people having another bite at this apple and speaking.
okay.
I think the language this time is better because the people in the county can understand the difference in the cost, which by law they could not last time. They had to only go by $40-some million. And trust me, in Augusta County, when you're talking about, we still respect the M word.
I appreciate, I apologize. I should have said 5 minutes aside. I didn't know we were going to be this long.
Yeah, and I'm just want to keep it, but as somebody who worked hard against the referendum, and if you think I won, the courts need to be fixed. And this, I think, is the best thing. The citizens decide to move it to Verona, we're in Verona.
Okay. Are there other people? Others? Are there people that are against the, John, do you want to, Delegate Avoli?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senators. I was mayor of the city of Stanton from 1990 to 2006 when probably most of the historic reservation was done. If all of you have been there, our Main Street and all of that was done under our council for those 16-some years. And I'm a strong proponent of historic preservation. My friends in Augusta County, unfortunately, may not be as strong on historic preservation. Their intent is to see the feasibility of moving this courthouse. Stanton was built in 1736, Mr. Chair. The streets are narrow, they're congested, and to do what needs to be done from the sake of safety, the sake of the expansion of the courthouse in the downtown area is feasibly impossible. Number one. Number two, the other concern that I have is that Verona is 5 miles from downtown where the courthouse is. Guess where the regional jail is? We're transporting prisoners, from Verona down into downtown Stanton, which is not a consumable thing. It's not a really smart thing to do with the volatility of it. So as mayor of the city and interested in that, what moves? What moves, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, is the function. The function moves. The historic courthouse of Stanton will always be there of Augusta County. It remained there from 1737, 1901, and hopefully something will be done. I'm hoping that the city council can ascertain the property at a minimal cost and have it under their control. At least they can control the historic preservation. By the way, Historic Stanton Foundation, which is a preservation operation, Senator Deeds is in favor of the city taking these.
And the negotiations are basically broken down between
Yes,
the
sir.
city and the county.
Yes, sir. It needs to happen, sir. And
Okay.
much to my remiss, it needs to happen. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator.
Mr. Chairman, a question to the mayor.
Senator Spruill has a question.
Yes, sir, Senator.
Not about that. You got to help me out. I was going to Homestead.
Yes, sir.
They told me to take a shortcut and go to Staunton.
Stanton.
3 hours and a half. I'm riding through. So I finally stop a state trooper. I'll say, I'm trying to find Staunton. So is it Staunton or is it Stanton?
It is Stanton. It was named after Lady Rebecca Stanton, the wife of Governor Gooch at the time, who sent the explorer William Beverly over the mountain.
Bless your heart. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And by the way, the Statler brothers, Harold Reed, call this Stanton, so if he calls it Stanton, that's Stanton, okay?
Okay, are there people who would like to speak against the bill?
If you're in the Zoom room and would like to speak against the bill, please raise your hand electronically now. Mr. Chairman, there are no speakers.
Okay, the bill,
Move to report.
are there other motions? Or do you want to close it out, or?
No, just briefly, I would say that there is support in the city actually, the city needs courtroom space too. You may be aware of that from practicing up there. So if, in fact, it goes to Verona, I think the Stanton could use the old courthouse for space. But if it stays in Stanton, we'll have to work out a plan. And, that's, an option needs to be
The
developed.
bills, open the
Mr.
roll, I'm sorry, Senator Surville.
I was just going to make a joke. I'll skip it.
Okay. Open the roll. Vote yes if you're in favor of the bill.
Ayes 14, noes 1.
Okay, the bill passes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Senator Suderland, you're next. Senate Bill 66. Okay, turn your attention to Senator Suderland. Senate Bill 66.
Thank you, Chairman Deeds, and to the committee. Senate Bill 66 would require that the official that gets to set a special election, it's often the governor. If we're in special session or in session at this time, it would be the President Pro Tem of the Senate or the Speaker of the House of Delegates. Any one of those officials, if a vacancy is going to occur between December 10th and March 1, they need to call that special election within 30 days. What we saw in the last few years was significant disparities in the amount of time special elections would be called. You may recall there was a Stafford/Prince William House of Delegates seat that was vacated in December, and we then had the election within 28 days. A state Senate seat just 3 weeks later, vacated in Southwest Virginia on the death of our friend Senator Chafin, and that special election was not held for another 81 days, which meant the people of Southwest Virginia missed having representation in the state Senate for those several counties the entire General Assembly session. The dates I picked, December 10th through March 1, is so that if there's any time during that time when there's going to be a vacancy, we will fill it as quickly as possible, so that during a regular session. It would not affect special sessions. I understand things are different at different times, but I just feel that it's very important that the people of the Commonwealth have their duly elected legislator in office speaking on their behalf.
I agree with you, Senator Suderland. The one thing I worry about is when there's a state of emergency, you don't know whether you can put all the blocks in place to make it happen. So I would probably be for this bill if you put some language in there, if you would be amenable to that, to allow, except for a state of emergency that's been called by the governor.
Mr. Chairman, the thing that makes me resistant to that is the previous governor, who I'm not trying to make this about, but he was the one that made me realize this was necessary. He had called a state of emergency, and at the same time he was calling districts that were predisposed to electing a member of his party. All those elections were called within 30 days. And when the district that you could argue might be the least likely to elect a member of his party had an election that needed to be called, he delayed 81 days for it. And so I feel that if there's a state of emergency, that would have been during a state of emergency, and he still would have been able to keep that delay, even though there was no more challenge to holding the election in Southwest Virginia than there was in Prince William and Stafford.
Have you confirmed that fact with the members of the State Board of Elections, State Department of Elections?
That there was nothing more difficult about holding the election in Southwest Virginia? And the State Board of Elections doesn't usually talk to us. Might be different in the future, but during the last 8 years, I only get to hear from Dr. O'Bannon.
Okay, thank you. Are there people that would like to speak in favor of this bill?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for the patron.
Senator Surville.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Senator Suderline, I'm not clear what's magical about December 10th versus right after the vacancy that would occur within a week of the election results, and I'm not clear why March 1st is the date you're picking.
So those dates were picked, and I'm open to people that see something that I'm missing here. But those dates were picked because that is when the General Assembly can be in session. So the General Assembly, a regular session, having to be the second Wednesday, would have to be January 8th. And with December being a 31-month, it would mean that by the time the General Assembly was, if there was a vacancy on the 10th, they would have someone here by the time votes started.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Surville.
further questions. So, but it seems to me by bracketing like this, you're going to create strategic behavior otherwise. So you're going to, instead of people sending in their resignation, say they elevate to somewhere else, maybe they might send a resignation on like November 15th otherwise. Now they might wait until December 10 when they know it's going to be 30 days and then therefore they're jammed on a 30-day schedule, which is really tight. Whereas if they resigned on November 10, we might be able to have 45 days or more for the election, which I think gets better information out to people and a better result. So I'm just not sure your bracket is the right bracket. Also, if somebody dies on February 28th, they're not coming to session. There won't be an election in time for them to come to session. Obviously, they'd be there for veto session. So I'm just not, the brackets to me are kind of obtuse.
So that's why you have the March 1 is for the veto session. Because that would then require the seat to be filled for veto session, which we all know is so significant.
Senator Evan, do you have a question?
No, I just wanted to, I guess, agree with Senator Surville that I'd like to, when possible, avoid 30 days. And, someone could resign on December 9th, and the governor could set it for significantly further out, right?
No, he couldn't, because the vacancy would exist on December 10th. So it's created so that if it needs to exist. So,
if it occurs between December 10th
yes, and it would be occurring. The vacancy occurs when it occurs the entire time it's vacant.
If it occurs on the 9th, that's when it occurs.
Well, I'm happy to change occurs to exist if that makes it clearer. I'm not on the committee, so I can't offer that amendment, but I'd welcome that.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the amendment just to continue the discussion because I think it's consistent with his intent, but because I think occurs means when you send the letter.
So the amendment would be on line 23, you'd strike the word occurs and replace it with exists. Is that it?
That's what I'd like.
Okay. Got a motion and a second to make that amendment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the bill's amended. Senator Surville, you want to continue the discussion. Do you have more questions?
I'm still thinking about it, Mr. Chairman, but this makes the bill a lot more workable by clarifying
Are there
that.
other questions from members of the committee?
Well,
Mr. Chair?
yes.
I'm sorry. I've got Senator Vogel. I apologize.
Okay, let her go first.
No.
I'm looking. Let her go.
Okay, Senator Peaks actually ahead of Senator Boysko, so I'll let.
And I would just say, Mr. Chair, question of patron, was there ever an explanation from the past administration as to why the House of Delegates races were done within 30 days and the Senate race was done at 2.5 months?
I never received an explanation, and I tend to follow Virginia political news pretty closely. I never saw one offered.
And Mr. Chair,
Senator Peake.
I would just remind people on this committee that we have a new governor in town, and if there's a vacancy that occurs, the same thing could happen to them. So it seems like a good
Sauce for the
bipartisan
goose,
bill.
sauce for the gander. Understand that. Senator Boysko.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question. I've passed this by the Board of Elections. They can get things ready in time. There shouldn't be any problem with that. Just wanted to clarify that.
So I've not talked with as I said, in the past several years, it's Dr. O'Bannon's who we hear from exclusively. And maybe that will change going forward. But during that time, there have been several elections held within 30 days. Speaker Filler Corn, when she was tasked with making this decision with Delegate Jones's quick departure, he'd been elected to a term that he was not going to serve. She wanted to make sure that Hampton Roads had representation, and she held that election within 28 days.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Surville. Well, now I'm sorry, Senator Vogel's ahead of you. Apologize. Senator Boysko, are you done with your questions? Okay, Senator Boysko. I mean Vogel, I apologize.
I go by all kinds of names. You
Yeah.
can't imagine. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Suderline, I had a question for you, and I apologize. I was trying to pull this together and find you before this moment. But I had a follow-up question, and it goes somewhat to the questions that were raised here, and that is, what input have our election officials had? And I know they often reach out to us. And one of the things that was raised just in a conversation I had with them, asking specifically about this, was in terms of time frame, I'm 100% supportive of the mission of the bill. The question that they raised was, in a quick time frame, it can put them in a real pinch to try to get the ballots printed, get everything organized, and get everything done. And the one thing that was raised was, could you accept an amendment to the bill that would set a window that would say no less than 30 days, but no more than 45 days? Does that frustrate your intent too much?
Yeah, 45 days.
Would screw the whole.
You can
be too
take a
late.
significant portion. And I
You could
see
miss too much of
Senator
session.
Boysko, who I remember, we did not get to have her in the Senate with us, which meant that Northwest Fairfax did not have representation when our colleague, Senator Wexton, became a member of the U.S. House.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Are you done?
I'm finished. Thank you,
Okay,
Mr. Chair.
Senator Surville.
Just to, I think, a question for the patron. And just to amplify, I think, that issue, the problem with, I mean, I agree with the intent, but the problem with the rigidity by putting brackets on things is that, for example, you could have a scenario where there are local elections that are specials that are declared in the same jurisdiction, and the poll books could be tied up or be wrapped up in weird ways so that the General Assembly special might overlap with the local special in a unworkable way. And because, you know, a lot of times these specials, they cascade. And, for example, you take a place like Fairfax, you could have a special for county board chairman that takes the whole county out of commission as opposed to one legislative district. And so a lot of times these things are set. They have to be set in coordination with other races. They're not always set on the same days in the same jurisdictions even. You know, and the local ones are set by what, a circuit court judge, I guess? I think if it's not a General Assembly race, I think it's set by a circuit court judge, if I'm not mistaken. So, in any event, those kinds of logistical challenges could create sort of unworkable situations if you have too much of a bracket on it. So that if in terms of what Senator Vogel just suggested, I'm not sure if there's a way to work good cause in there somehow, but I don't know who would be the judge of good cause. But there might be a way to build some more flexibility into it that might achieve your purpose, whereas this might be too rigid. That's kind of what I'm seeing.
Are there other questions? Are there people in the audience or in the virtual world who'd like to speak in favor?
Mr. Chairman, real quick question.
Senator Bell.
Question for the patron. Have you researched, is there a best practice around the country for how other states have handled this?
So when I looked, I did not. Part of the issue is other states have different ways of filling vacancies. So in Colorado, if a member of the legislature departs, their party actually picks someone. So it's not everyone has the special elections like this. So when I went looking, I got to learn all the different ways people fill seats, and it was fascinating. In Virginia, the practice of our governors and Speaker Phil Korn has overwhelmingly been to hold these 30-day elections if it's going to affect the legislature. And the Senator Chafin vacancy was the anomaly. And other times, though, and that's why the bill is silent on the rest of the year, when Senator Chafin came in, he was elected in August. And, of course, that vacancy had been produced much earlier than just 30 days before. And that way they'd like it to run its normal course. And I don't want to affect special sessions. I only want to affect the regular session.
Are there other questions? Are we ready to hear from proponents?
If you are in the Zoom room and would like to speak in support of the bill, please raise your hand electronically now. Mr. Chairman, we have one individual wishing to speak in support.
Okay, give it a couple of minutes, no more than 2 minutes.
Patricia Marzaglina, you can start your testimony.
Yes, Marcelia, and I'm from Arlington, Virginia, bloodline in Virginia since 1700s. And I definitely support this bill. I think the senator shows good common sense. I can tell you he has good intent, and I definitely support this bill.
Wonderful.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am. Yes.
Arlingtonians are wonderful.
So is that the only proponent that wants to speak, or are there opponents of the bill that would like to speak?
If you are in the Zoom room and would like to speak in opposition to the bill, please raise your hand electronically now.
Oh, it's not someone from Roanoke now.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Allison Robbins would like to speak.
Okay, Ms. Robbins, open your mic. You have 2 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, Allison Robbins, Director of Elections.
Ms. Robbins, there you are.
Thank you. Sorry. Allison Robbins, Director of Elections and General Registrar for the County of Wise with the Voter Registrars Association. We do not have an official position on the legislation. However, we do appreciate the committee's thorough review of the situation that relates to the timeline in which a special would be called, and appreciate the emphasis on doing the work to ensure that special elections get called as quickly as possible. However, we do have some concerns related to just ensuring that there's an adequate amount of time that is given to local election officials to actually conduct an election as expedient as possible. Thank you.
You've got one question, Ms. Robbins. Senator Eben.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would ask Ms. Robbins, how much time from having a nominee certified do you need to conduct a special election in kind of a surprise scenario like that? What would be an adequate amount of time?
Ideally, because of, obviously it is possible to pull off an election within 30 days. There's good examples of that, but ideally, we would prefer to have something in the neighborhood of around 45 days to 60 days to allow for a full timeline of early voting and by mail voting and those requirements.
If I could follow up, Mr. Chair.
Sure, Senator Eben.
How much time do you need, if you're pressed, to allow the military folks to vote by having the absentee ballots with the nominees of the parties?
If we're needing to mail ballots overseas and ballots to come back overseas, as we all know, that those people are crunched to be able to get their ballots back in within the full 45 days of the early voting period. That's basically what we see is sometimes even when we get ballots out by email on time to overseas voters, they're still right up against the deadline getting those ballots back in just because of the challenges that they have with overseas mail delivery.
Mr. Chair, if I might ask one question of the patron.
Senator Eben.
Okay, so just if we go with this 30-day scenario, how much time would a party have to produce a nominee before the Board of Elections has to have it?
That power decision for that power would remain with the governor or the Speaker of the House of Delegates or the President Pro Tem of the Senate.
Well, if you had a 30-day total window for when the election has to be held, if you walk backwards, maybe this is a question for Mr. Piper or someone else, they have to produce the nominee in order to get their name printed on the ballot, and the ballots have to be set. So I didn't like when they had a special election in North Arlington that Delegate Rip Sullivan got elected. I didn't like the fact that they had to have the nomination process in about 3 days or something from 7 days. So I'm just curious, that's what I'm weighing, is the benefit of having a seat always represented with allowing there to be a full discussion of the ideas to the public, particularly with the nominee.
I think that was more of a statement than a question. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, the bill's before the committee.
Move to report.
Second.
To report the bill. Okay, is there a substitute motion, or is there?
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Surville.
I got a motion to PBI the bill and for you to send a letter to the Board of Elections to ask them for feedback on what a minimum time frame and what a minimum bracket within which they could feel comfortable.
Carry over the bill.
Okay, carry over. I'm sorry. I'll amend the motion. I'll carry it over to carry it over to the next session, 2023, with a letter to the State Board of Elections to provide feedback on a proper time frame to achieve this policy goal.
Okay, is that motion got a second?
Second.
Okay, that's substitute motion, which takes precedence to carry the bill over with a letter to the State Board of Elections to figure out how to implement. Does everybody understand the motion? The motion's before you. I'd ask the clerk to open the roll.
Ayes 9, noes 6.
Okay, the bill is carried over. Now, Senator Sudalan, you've got another bill, but I've got a bunch of other bills before I get to that, but I'd ask you to look at 306 with that, because I think that bill is a little bit broader. It accomplishes the same thing you want, but it accomplishes some other things too. So take a look at that and see if you'd be comfortable rolling your bill into 306.
Probably not.
Okay, well, we're going to take up other bills first.
That's fine. I'll go to my subcommittee.
Okay.
See y'all later.
Senator
Thank you.
Stanley's next on the list, but Senator Stanley's not here. Senator McClellan is not here. I think you were going to carry that bill over for the week. Senator Chase, you have several bills, and the first one on my list is 459.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Senate Bill 459 is a bill that specifically relates to our registrars and making sure that they are above reproach. This bill specifically says that the state board shall establish standards for evaluation of the performance of general registrars. We want to make sure our registrars are doing a great job, and we need some type of metric in order to ensure that is occurring. At a minimum, such standards shall provide for the placement of general registrars in categories for satisfactory performance, less than satisfactory performance, and poor performance. The state board shall establish remedial measures to be applied to registrars demonstrating less than satisfactory and poor performance. The department shall conduct an annual evaluation of all general registrars and the Commonwealth according to the standards established by the state board and ensure the performance of any required remedial measures. Any general registrar receiving a performance evaluation indicating poor performance 2 years in a row shall be considered to have failed to discharge the duties of his or her office in accordance to the law and shall be subject to renewal. Mr. Chairman, that is the first part of the bill. We are just ensuring that we have integrity with our registrars that are serving our communities to make sure that we have fair, transparent elections. The second part of this bill, it changes is lines 113 through 117, and it specifically talks about which relationships can no longer serve as a general registrar, and I think these are general good guidelines, best practice guidelines. It says no general registrar shall have a spouse, relative, or person with whom he resides who serves as the chairman of a political party or other officer of a state, local, or district level political party committee. No general registrar shall have a spouse, relative, or person with whom he resides who serves as a paid or volunteer worker in the campaign of a candidate for nomination or election to an office filled by an election in whole or in part by the qualified voters of the registrar's jurisdiction. Mr. Chairman, this bill came to me through a concerned resident, and I won't talk about the county because I don't think that would be appropriate, but there was a county in which it was indicated to me that the spouse of a current registrar worked for a campaign of that particular election cycle that they were in. The spouse worked for the opponent. And I just think that we need to examine the code to make sure that we avoid the appearance of not being fair. I think it's a good best practices. I think it's good governance, and I would hope the committee would agree with me on
The
that.
spouse worked for the opponent of the person that contacted you, is that?
So the person that contacted me said that the spouse of the registrar worked for a campaign of one of the congressional candidates.
Okay. Is a general registrar a local employee or a state employee?
My understanding is that they are a local employee in the registrar's
And
office.
they are hired or fired by local electoral boards, not the state board?
Right, the county.
Okay. Okay, are there other questions
Yeah.
of the patron? Senator Abbott?
Mr. Chairman, I've got two problems with the bill, big problems, but on line 113 to 117, it says no general registrar shall have a relative or person with whom he resides serve as the chairman of this or an officer or a volunteer or paid worker. So according to this bill, I could have a cousin who works for a campaign who I don't even speak to or don't even know well, and I would have to lose my job because my cousin is volunteering on a campaign? Is that right?
So, Mr. Chairman and Senator Eben, what I would tell you is that our responsibility is to the people of Virginia, and we have to avoid all appearance of any type of conflict of interest. Whether there is a conflict of interest or not, we have to avoid the appearance. It's just being above reproach.
Yeah.
Our referees, in my opinion, Mr. Chairman, Senator Eben, are our referees, and we just need to make sure that we're above reproach, because whatever results come out of this election, this is the foundation to have good, transparent elections that the people perceive to be fair and to continue peaceful transfer of power. They have to have confidence in those results, and we need to make sure the referees are pure and above reproach. So, I stand by the bill language, and while I understand the concern, I think we have to keep in mind the people of Virginia and how they perceive this registrar, because registrars, as we know, they have to make critical decisions. I mean, we saw what happened in Henrico County whenever there was a flash drive that suddenly appeared in Henrico County that was labeled provisional ballots. And later, those same provisional ballots were deemed actual ballots that were then counted and actually determined the outcome of a congressional race.
That issue doesn't really have anything to do with this bill.
Well, my whole point is that the people have to rely that the registrars are not tainted, that they don't have any skin in the game, that they are neutral arbiters of our elections. And so that's why I bring that up, Mr.
Are there
Chairman.
other questions of the patron of this bill? Are there those in the, I'm sorry, Senator Howe. Senator Howe.
This is more by way of just a comment, but I've been on this committee for at least 25 years and chaired it for, I believe, 4 years, and I have never, ever heard anybody up until now question the integrity of our registrars.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Howe, I would tell you that the people of Virginia feel that the 2020 presidential election was unprecedented in our time, and that they have many questions about the 2020 presidential election that have gone unanswered. And so I'm doing everything I can and doing my due diligence
That's really an
to try
interesting
to
point,
address
Senator
that
Chase,
issue.
because in 2021, under the same rules, we had a record turnout, and your side won, and they won fair and square, under the same rules we had in 2020. And I disagree that when you say the people of Virginia, I don't think the people of Virginia.
Mr. Chairman,
it might be a portion of the people of Virginia.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate your comments, and I would simply say this. In the work world, and even in the Senate of Virginia, we have certain nepotism laws in place, either spoken or unspoken, where we allow or disallow members of our family to work alongside us for perceived conflict of interest. And I see this as being no different than that. It's similar, it reminds me of Senator Norman's bill that came forward at this committee last week, and simply just trying to avoid the same type of appearance.
Brooks, are registrars subject to the Local Employee Conflicts of Interest Act? Do you know?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not aware of whether or not their status is
Are
as
there
local
other questions of
employees.
Senator Chase?
Mr.
Senator
Chairman.
Bell?
I think either you or I don't know if the Board of Elections, but my question is, it's kind of along with Senator Howe. My time at the General Assembly, I haven't heard of any registrar who has been accused of poor performance or unsatisfactory, or much less an integrity issue. Out of the 95 counties of Virginia, can you have any stats on the number of registrars you feel are not performing satisfactorily?
I do. Senator Deeds and Senator Bell, what I would tell you, I remember listening in the news and hearing about in the city of Richmond, there was some issues that came up even this past session, and there was a lot of tension in that registrar's office as well as Henrico County. Now, I'm not going to pick on particular counties. I'm just saying they are news reports, and I feel that our due diligence is to make sure that we avoid any type of appearance of nepotism, or just as a general rule or guidance. I'm not trying to pick on a registrar. I just think it's a good governance practice. I really am not trying to single out registrars. It's just good practice, whether we're in the Senate of Virginia or on the governor's staff, the attorney general's staff. It's just a general best practice of rule of trying to make sure, just for instance, if, let's just say I'm the registrar, and my spouse decides to run for public office, I should recuse myself, because the people would recognize that relationship as compromising to that election. They would think that maybe that registrar was compromised and wouldn't make a fair decision. So I'm not trying to pick on, and that is never my intent, to
Senator
single
Bell,
out.
is that your question?
A particular.
Not really, Mr. Chairman. What I was looking for is, out of 95 counties, each year, how many do we have that are considered poor performance? 5, 10, without naming a county name? I mean, do you have a number?
Well, what I would tell you is that I just know those two right off the top of my head. I would be happy to do further research on that. I am happy to offer an amendment to make it a spouse and leave it for now, and then we can expand it later if you would like.
Mr. Chair?
Senator Boyce, with Senator Bell, are you finished?
Yes, sir.
Senator Boyce, go.
Give us one example from a credible news source of a problem that occurred with citations of where you got the information, please.
Okay, well, if you can pull it up on your phone right now. If you do a Google search on Richmond City Registrar, you can also do a search under Henrico County Registrar with the whole debacle with the flash drive. Both of those are available to the public. I pulled them up earlier today, and it was not my desire, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, to single out any particular registrar. That's not the intent of this bill, but I would tell you that I would like to avoid that appearance and that happening in the future. For me to get a comment from one of my constituents in regards to this particular situation, I just want to make sure we tighten things up and avoid any appearances that our elections aren't fair. And I don't want to be in an accusatory position.
Are there additional questions for Senator Chase? Senator Eben.
I have an observation and a motion. I just want to say that there's certain things that you rely on, like when judges and their spouses, they know they often help their spouses by avoiding the hint of any kind of conflict. And I don't think there's a problem with the registrars doing this, and they're employed by their local electoral boards who can make evaluations if there are serious conflicts. So with that, I have a motion, sir.
Well, let's wait and hear from the public first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, 5 minutes total on each side. I'd like to hear from those people who are in favor of the bill.
If you are in the Zoom room and would like to speak in favor of the bill, please raise your hand electronically now. Mr. Chairman, we have two speakers.
Okay, well, let's have at it.
Thank you. Actually, I have more of a question.
Well, we're not going to. We don't answer questions.
Hi, Senator Deeds. I'm from your district.
Hey, how are you?
Doing very well, thank you, sir.
Could you identify yourself?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
No, identify yourself, please. Tell us who you are.
Oh, I apologize. Thank you. I'm Jackie Hefner. Okay. My husband's a pastor in Nelson County. But my question is, what steps are already in place to make sure that registrars are above reproach.
Local electoral boards pick the registrar.
I just know, for example, when I was an election officer this past term, and it was very clear that I had to make sure that I was not a spouse or a relative or anything of anyone in order to fulfill my duties. And to make sure that those stipulations applied not just to myself.
Mr. Piper, are there rules in place from at the state?
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Reeves.
if you just read the bill, it has it in there. If you read line 108 to 111 before the strikeout, it talks about the general registrar.
No, so not
If
service.
you-
Chair, okay.
Mr. Chairman, and then if you go up a little farther, and it talks about Department of Elections shall supervise its own staff to ensure that no member of its staff shall serve, line 67 and such. I think what Senator Chase's bill is trying to get at is relatives of general registrars, and I have a question for the patron, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, Senator Chase, is there anything in this code section that prevents a registrar or a family member in your new legislation that prevents them from contributing to a candidate?
It does not.
I think
And I believe that would be a violation against the First Amendment.
I think we have another person to hear from.
Vic Nichols, please unmute and begin your testimony, followed by Elizabeth Sykes.
Thank you. We had an example in Chesapeake where there were concerns on how some issues were handled, and that was with the workers. The workers did appeal to the local Board of Elections, was blown off. They just said, no, nothing happened, blew it off. And there was even distinct documentation given to them that said, yes, this all occurred, it's questionable. It went to the state and nothing got done. The reason why is party affiliation. So this right here would take care of situations like that. Simply because you don't hear about them doesn't mean that doesn't happen. And we have also had another issue where people have brought up that the registrar hired family, friends, and the like to sit there and get paid for their particular time when they're doing the actual parts where it's the 45-day ahead of time, and they get those jobs. So this would help take care of that. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, next.
Ms. Sykes, please begin your testimony, followed by Patricia Marzalija.
And I would remind the proponents you have less than 3 minutes now combined. Ms. Sykes.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Sykes has dropped out of the Zoom.
Marsiglia. Ms. Marsiglia.
Thank you. It's Marcelia. The G is silent.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay. Well, I don't think Senator Evans has any close relatives in Virginia, since when I called his office, his friend there was from California. I just want to mention that. Now, another little thing here. I think they should have performance evaluations because, now the reason they should have performance evaluations is because they need to know what they're doing. When I called the registrar's office in Arlington, Virginia, and I was a longtime Democrat all my life, and I wanted to change party affiliation. And what they told me was, oh, we don't do that in Virginia, in Arlington anymore. We don't register.
We've never registered by party, ma'am, in Virginia.
Yeah, well, I learned that. So anyways, I support the bill.
Thank you, ma'am. Michael Hirsch.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I am Reverend Michael Hirsch. I live currently in Caroline County. Formerly, I enjoyed residence in the city of Fredericksburg, Virginia, where under our late registrar, Juanita Pitchford, God rest her soul, I was happy to serve as a nonpartisan officer of elections. However, that changed when I was elected to become chairman of one of our parties here in Virginia. I was informed by the registrar that I could no longer serve as an officer of election because I was deemed that I could not be nonpartisan. And my thinking is what's fair is fair. So I think that Ms. Chase is speaking well to the issue, and that we want to be certain that we are serving our constituents in a nonpartisan manner. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Hirsch. That's part of the law right now. No general registrar shall serve as a chairman of a political party or other official or other officer of a state, local, or district level political party or committee. Yeah, and yes, sir.
I'd like to speak to the bill.
Yes, sir.
Shane Snavely. My understanding, we understand the climate in the last 4 years with elections. We understand that, people are on both sides, but more on the right, have problems and feel things are wrong. I think the amendment to allow to be a spouse only is a good thing because that's really narrows it down. And what it would do, it would at least give the people something to show that you're trying to make things a little better.
Okay, thank you. Yes, you've got 20 seconds left. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Barbara Tabb with the Electoral Board Association here in Virginia. I just want to clarify something.
Or are you for or against the bill?
I'm neutral, but you all have got a bunch of questions about how registrars are evaluated, and the 3-member, 2 Democrats at this point, 1 Republican, hire and evaluate these registrars every year. In June of every year, they have to go through a formal evaluation with a formal set of questions that we then have to adhere to. I just wanted to clarify that. There is a formal way to do it. It is executed every year, and those resorts do go to the election department.
But it's basically done at the local level, isn't it?
It's done on the people who hire and fire that person do their evaluations.
Okay. Are there those that want to, on the other side? Yes. Are you speaking for the bill?
For the bill.
You got 16 seconds.
Okay, I'll do it real fast. Hey, my name is Becky Hendricks. I'm from Hanover County, and the more and more I'm learning about these elections and the processes, I'm disgusted, actually. And I do think needs to be some accountability, and I see rolling of eyes, and I see lots of different things when you don't agree. So I am concerned that there's a lot of funny business going around, and it's probably been going around for about 30 years now.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, are there those who would like to speak against the bill?
If you are in the Zoom room and would like to speak against the bill, please raise your hand electronically now. Mr. Chairman, we have 1 speaker, Allison Robbins.
Okay, Ms. Robbins, you're up.
Mr. Chairman, Allison Robbins, Director of Elections and General Registrar for the County of Wise. And just to speak to what Barbara Tabb from the Electoral Board Association shared, local registrars are appointed by the bipartisan electoral boards in each of the 133 localities, and we are annually evaluated on an evaluation criteria that is set by the Department of Elections and the State Board, and those annual evaluations are sent to the State Board of Elections. So a lot of what the senator's asking for already exists in law that has long been passed by this General Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, I just have one question.
Senator Reeves.
And I'm sorry, and this is
you
to
have a question to Ms. Robbins, or?
Well, whoever can answer, but I'm thinking Brooks might be the answer. I'm trying to understand, there was some testimony about a registrar hiring relatives to work the election. And I don't find anything in here except a line about on 105, Brooks. It says the electoral board shall not appoint to the office of general registrar any person who's the spouse of an electoral board member, or any person, or the spouse of any person. I don't see where this code section anywhere in here says that a general registrar can't hire their own relatives to work an election. Is that true? We had this topic discussion, and I thought that doesn't seem right, but I don't see anywhere where it was in here.
Mr.
If that
Chairman.
is, I'll get a new bill, but
Mr. Chairman, can I answer
Sure,
the
'cause
question?
you've got the answer.
So I think the confusion here is that some are focused on the registrar, and I'm talking about the people that the registrar is bringing on. And if you look at line 113, it clarifies that no registrar shall have a spouse. We're talking about the spouse, the relative, or person with whom he resides who serves as the chairman of a political party or other officer of state, local, or district level political party. We're not talking about the registrar. We're talking about the people that the registrar brings in have to be uncompromised. There's already, as you mentioned, in the code, information about the registrar. These are the people that they bring in. So I hope that clarifies.
Senator Peake.
Mr. Chair, to the patron, and I agree with Senator Eben on the part of what you just read that says or relative. So if we could restrict it to spouse or someone that they reside with, would you be amenable to that amendment?
I would.
All right, I would move that amendment.
Got a motion and a second. So you're basically striking the
Relative.
commas and the word relative on line 113.
Yes.
Okay. Does everybody understand the
And
amendment?
115.
And on line 115 too? Twice you're doing it.
Yes.
Okay, does everybody understand that amendment? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Are there additional questions? The amended bill is before the committee. Are there substitute motions?
Substitute motion.
Senator Eben.
Move to PBI.
Motion and a second to PBI. That the substitute motion takes precedence. All in favor, vote, open the voting machine. All in favor of PBI, vote green.
Ayes 9, noes 6.
Ayes 9, no 6. Okay, Senator Chase, your next bill is 235. And that is identical to Senate Bill 167 that Senator Peake had that we PBI'd last week.
I hope I can be more clear and convincing. Senate Bill 235, it repeals a provision that would permit any person who is qualified to register to vote and to register and vote in person up to and including the day of the election, notwithstanding any deadline for the close of registration records. The repeal will limit the persons who are entitled to register to vote after the close of registration records to any member of a uniformed service of the United States who is active duty, any person residing temporarily outside of the United States, and a spouse or dependent residing within someone listed. Mr. Chairman, to your point, this is the same-day registration bill, which we're concerned about. We're concerned because, as I was alluding to earlier, like anything I've ever seen before in the 7 years I've been in the Senate, never until last year did I get a lot of concerned callers who called me and said, Senator Chase, I went to cast my vote and my vote had already counted. Never really experienced anything like that until last year. And so my concern is that really what we did in 2020, while I agree, I think we need to improve access to voting, especially in-person voting. I'm all for it. The thing that concerns me is that we've opened basically a floodgate of many new changes to Virginia law that is giving a lot of our voters some room for concern. And my concern is that same-day registration, which is getting ready to go into place, might be a little bit premature. And I just want to quote, I would like to quote James Bopp Jr., who's an attorney and a former vice chair of the Republican National Committee from 2008 to 2012. He argued that same-day registration threatens election security because there's simply not enough time to verify eligibility, saying all election laws should serve one goal, that all valid votes should be counted. In serving that goal, there are two concerns. One is to make sure it is easy as practical for people to vote, and the other is to prevent people who are not eligible to vote from voting. When an ineligible person votes, he's canceling out a valid voter, and these two goals should have equal weight. With same-day registration, Mr. Chairman, there's simply no way to safeguard against people registering to vote who are not entitled to vote, and yet their ballots go into the ballot box. Verifying eligibility just takes time.
Well, Senator Chase, same-day registration has, and we have heard the same bill last week, but same-day registration has been the law in Utah for many years. How come it works out there and it won't work here?
Well, I have former Kansas Secretary of State Chris Kobach, who said in 2016 that the state would not be able to prevent people from voting multiple times on Election Day if same-day registration is allowed. I also have a criminal complaint from a gentleman, Clancy, served as a special registration deputy, or SRD, for the city of Milwaukee in advance of the 2008 presidential election, and he worked for Acorn. And Clancy was accused of submitting multiple voter registration applications for the same individual, and also was part of a scheme in which he had and other SRDs registered each other to vote multiple times in order to meet voter registration quotas. Now, that was by Acorn, but that is an example. According to the criminal complaint, Clancy served as a special registration deputy for the city of Milwaukee in advance of the 2008 presidential election, and he worked for Acorn. He was accused, and this is the part that concerns me, Mr. Chairman, is that he was accused of submitting multiple voter registration applications for the same individual.
We've already heard this bill. So
Okay.
We heard when Senator Peake. So what I want to do is, if people need to be heard on this bill, let's do 2 minutes aside, and then we'll take it up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, ma'am. People that are for the bill.
If you wish to speak in support of the bill and you are in the Zoom, please raise your hand electronically now.
Yeah, we did.
Mr. Chairman, there are a multitude of speakers.
Okay, you've got a total of 2 minutes. No, she was here, but she'd asked for a bill to be carried.
roll it in, open chain objective.
No, that was the other bill. That was a different bill.
Okay, my bill I got, sorry.
Yeah, Senator Chase was here, but she asked for bills to go by for the day, correct?
We'll talk, well,
Last week?
that has nothing to do with this bill.
Yeah, well, that's what, they were arguing that your bill had rolled into his bill, but I told them that wasn't the case.
Yeah, that's a different bill.
Yeah. Okay, there are people, in multitude of people that want to speak in favor of this bill, and they have 2 minutes total.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Reverend Michael Hirsch. I live in Caroline County, Virginia. I've served as a nonpartisan officer of elections. I urge you to vote yes on Senate Bill 235. Limiting same-day registration is an effective way to prevent voter fraud. Thank you. Let's keep our elections secure. Please vote yes for 235.
Thank you, Mr. Hirsch. Vic Nichols.
Thank you. Not just to promote fraud, but we already have overloaded registrars, and the people that they're getting to both volunteer and work for them are getting fewer, they're getting older. So they need to be able to cope with that, and another thing is not going to help. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Diana Howard.
Hi. I want to support this bill because I think it should be easy to vote but harder to cheat, and same-day registration makes it easy to cheat. There should be no same-day registration for voting. It puts an undue burden on our registrar's office and allows those who want to cheat to be able to relocate or move and vote in multiple locations or states.
Okay,
So please vote in favor of the bill.
Thank you, ma'am. Jonathan LaRue.
Hello, my name is Jonathan LaRoe. I'm a resident of Haymarket, Virginia. I just really quickly want to say I support Amanda Chase's bill to make sure that we don't have same-day registration. I've been doing a lot of analysis on the actual registration data for both 2020 and 2021, and it would definitely help to be able to have the time to verify people before their vote actually gets thrown into a machine. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Less than 30 seconds, Lei Shuping. And you've got a couple of speakers after you.
Yeah, I agree. This is my favorite bill. I support this bill.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Dr. Wheeler.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I support this bill because it does not, if with same-day voter registration, the registrars cannot possibly verify the location, the social security numbers, or the previous registration of any voter. It is imperative that the registrars be allowed to do their job and check the verification of registration for
Thank you,
voting.
ma'am. I'd like for the remaining speakers to just identify themselves, where they're from, and state that who they represent if they represent more than just themselves. The next speaker is Kun Wang.
My name is Kong Wang. I'm living in Virginia, Fairfax. I support this bill.
Okay, thank you, sir. Patricia Marsalia.
Thank you. I live in Arlington and I support this bill. There was a big difference between the 20 and 21 election in Arlington at the Walter Reed precinct, which I will bring up later.
Thank you, ma'am. Paul Lott.
My name is Paul Lott. I'm the founder of the National Advancement of Black Americans. I support this bill because same-day voter registration is something that no one asked for, and that just as it's just not necessary, and it threatens voter integrity.
Thank you, sir. Okay, are there those that want to have another view?
If you wish to speak in opposition of this bill and you are in the Zoom room, please raise your hand electronically now. Mr. Chairman, we have a couple speakers. Ms. Kelly Price, you will be first.
Ms. Price.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm in Burke, Virginia. I oppose this. Same-day voting does help, and I think that they're cast as provisional ballots anyway, so it's not going to go right in the bucket anyway.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Who's next?
Mr. Chairman, those are all those speakers that would like to speak in opposition.
Okay, are there people in the room?
Hi, I'm Deb Wake, President of the League of Women Voters of Virginia. We oppose this bill. We find that 21 states in the District of Columbia have had same-day voter registration and no problems. And my experience as a chief election officer is that this bill would make the most difference for the most number of voters. This year, there were a particularly high number of 18-year-olds who, for whatever reason, weren't in the system. We don't want to chill these young voters from having the experience of voting. It's one of those important life things. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else? Yes.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, James here with Fairfax County. We are fully prepared to implement this legislation, so we ask that you support the bill. The provisional ballot process will ensure that no voter can vote twice. Thank you.
To support the bill or?
Oppose the bill.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Can I wrap it up, Mr. Chairman?
You can wrap it up, and I'd appreciate if you would do it very quickly.
I absolutely will. Number one, we have 45 days to vote in person. If you have to wait until the last day to the eve to register here, there is a problem. Number two, we have the Equal Protection Clause of the United States Constitution. So we just need to make sure if we're going to have multiple locations, we need to have time to verify that people aren't casting multiple votes. And that is
Thank you. Now, I
closing
remind the
remarks.
committee this is identical to Senator Peake's bill that we had last week. Do I have a motion?
And I'd be happy to add you in as a chief co-patron, Senator Peake.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Boyce, go.
Move to pass by indefinitely.
There's a motion and a second to PBI. Are there alternative motions? And all in favor of passing by indefinitely, vote yea.
Ayes 9, noes 6.
The bill is passed by indefinitely. Your next bill, Senator Chase, is 588.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 588 came to me from a group of concerned citizens who wanted to verify the information in the voter registration rolls. And whenever they went to the State Board of Election to ask, actually they initially were going to FOIA request this information, they found out that there was a significant charge of thousands of dollars in order to receive that list. Mr. Chairman, this bill is to provide everyday average Virginians the opportunity to inspect the voter registration list, and that group actually used that list in order to verify actually many ghost voters across Virginia. They actually did a canvassing effort and found a number of the homes that they went to that either the people were no longer living there, or they might have 10 registered voters and only 2 of them perhaps live there. So this is a grassroots efforts of concerned Virginians who want access to the voter registration so that they can check and make sure that we have fair, free elections, and that they have everyday Virginians should be able to inspect the voter registration rolls. And I actually looked at what other states were doing. Many states allow a citizen to submit a FOIA request to get such a copy at no charge. And I just think it's important that we allow those folks that opportunity to do that. And that's basically the bill. And I urge the body to support it.
Okay, Mr. Piper, I'd appreciate it if you'd come up and just talk about, the purpose of the bill is to provide a copy of the list to anybody at cost.
Correct.
Okay. Now, right now, just reading through the bill, there are limitations on who you can provide it to and what you can charge them.
That's correct.
Would you just summarize that?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. So candidates, political parties, political action committees who are registered either with the department or the FEC, and then third-party groups with the purpose of voter registration, I think is the best way to put it.
Okay, and the limitation on price. I see down here a reasonable price in the code. Is that generally what's the policy of the department right now?
So, Mr. Chairman, over the years, with the costs and maintenance of the voter registration database and the staff to maintain it, all of that's factored into the cost of that list. And so that, I think right now we're at $6,500 for the cost of the full statewide Commonwealth list. To Senator Chase's point, there are some states who offer this list for free and post it on their website. There are other states, such as Alabama, that charge $50,000. So it runs the gamut across the country.
And for a typical magisterial district list, if I wanted to say get the list for the Millboro Magisterial District in Bath County.
Right. So, Mr. Chairman, it depends on the number of registered voters in the particular district. So it can be as low as $30. It can be as high as $1,000.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Peake.
Yes, sir. Mr. Piper, who sets the price? So if I wanted the Lynchburg voter registration list, does the Lynchburg registrar set the price, or do you set the price?
So, Mr. Chairman, the price is set at the Department of Elections. You can only purchase the list from the department.
See, the list isn't going to come from the registrar. It's going to come from the state.
Come from the state, and the state will set the price. So, Mr.
Senator Peake.
Chairman, do we not have a price per voter or per page?
Mr. Chairman, that is, the formula is per voter. So if you have a small district with not that many voters, so for example, Highland County, I can't think of the top of my head, but you could get the entire county for a few $100s.
But, Mr. Chairman, so the state has its 3 cents per voter?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it's not 3 cents per voter, but there is a formula, and I'm happy to send it to you.
Well, I wanted to know what the cost was, Mr. Chairman, but and to follow up, so you are including the cost of, the state has to do all this stuff. The state has to include a voter registration rolls. It keeps them up to date. It has employees to do that, and it pays the employees, and we provide a budget for you to do that. But when a citizen wants the list of registered voters, you are charging that citizen a portion of the fee that you do to maintain
Peake,
that
under
list?
existing law, a citizen can't get the list. There are only certain.
Well, committee,
certain committees or candidates
committee
can get the
person, somebody representing a voter integrity group has to pay for a portion of the state's cost of maintaining the voter registration list?
Mr. Chairman, by law, we're required to charge a reasonable price.
And that reasonable price, Mr. Chairman,
Senator Peake.
does not include the cost of printing it. It includes the cost of maintaining, developing, and updating the list.
Right, Mr. Chairman, the information is provided electronically at this point, so there is no cost for printing.
So Mr. Chairman.
Senator Peake.
It really takes one person to punch the file, and then send an email to that group or organization, and it will have the entire list.
Mr. Chairman, it's a little bit more complicated than that. There's a lot of work that goes into developing the reports, et cetera. But yes, to your point, there is when a request comes in, we provide it electronically. There are staff that goes into that. But it really is, the formula was created well before my time, and so
Mr. Chairman, I understand. I'm not accusing you of anything, but trying to clarify to this point, you maintain a voter registration list as the state does. And it has a breakdown for every locality, for every district, et cetera, correct?
Mr. Chairman, yes, that's correct.
And you can send that electronically to the organization that requested, and is entitled by code to receive it.
That is correct, yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Bell.
Question, the list, is it always in a printed format, in a file format, electronically? Is that always the same?
Mr. Chairman, it's a CSV file, essentially, that's transmitted electronically to the requester.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One other follow-up?
Sure, Senator Bell.
Reading in the code, basically it says after what the bill would put forth, the list shall be furnished to no one else and used for no other purpose. What if it's found the list is used for another purpose? What's the penalty?
Mr. Chairman, I don't believe there's a clear penalty in this, and I have to ask, I can't think off the top of my head, but what I can say is that the Department of Elections does not prosecute, does not investigate, so any allegation would have to be investigated by the Commonwealth's Attorney or the Attorney General's office.
That raises another question, though, because if we're adding that one sentence before that, what purpose is this the list that can go to anybody used for?
Mr. Chairman,
meaninglessly.
That is my concern, because I think we're dramatically opening up who can get this voter list. And if there's no real penalties or stops on this, I'm concerned we could really be opening up Pandora's box.
Okay, are there other questions of Mr. Piper or Senator Chase?
And Mr. Chairman, I would also, if I could, if there is an amendment that would like to be offered, really the intent of this is to make sure that the citizens who don't have a lot of money, they're not part of an organization, they're grassroots individuals who want to ensure fair, free elections. The election belongs to them. Now, I understand the concern. We want to make sure it's not used for nefarious reasons. And I would be agreeable if the voter file was used in a nefarious way, there should be a penalty. And I agree with that. And if there's an amendment offered, I would probably accept it.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Reeves.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I do share some of the concerns that my colleague on the far end shares, that next thing you know, Amazon's going to be mailing stuff that I don't want. But since I think I understand the intent. You're trying to get some of these integrity voter organizations the opportunity to have access to our voter data. What if on line 18, and Brooks play along here, nonprofit organizations that promote voter participation, registration, and or voter integrity purposes only? If we added the term voter integrity, would that be offensive to anyone?
And then you'd end up striking the italicized language if you did that?
Say that again, Mr. Chairman?
You'd strike the new language.
I would strike the new language and make that amendment up in that section, which would narrowly define it down to, I think what Senator Chase is trying to get at, is to allow some of the groups that.
But it would still be, you'd require to have a nonprofit organization.
Correct. And
not a citizen, a nonprofit organization.
Instead of the general public, which anyone who's I'm a State Farm agent, Mr. Chairman. I'd get that list and I'd start selling them State Farm insurance.
Yeah, we do not.
And I don't know that we want to open that up, but I think I know what her intent of the bill is.
That's the point Senator Bell was making. I think if you don't tie that next sentence that talks about you can't use it for any other purpose to the purpose that the citizen's getting it.
Right. I'm in complete agreement with that amendment.
Senator Peake.
Instead of integrity, if we could put in verification.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we take this bill by a week and you all try to work out, if you want to work out some language?
Wonderful.
Do that.
Mr. Chairman, the one thing I would add is if you do put a penalty in, if the information is used incorrectly, the FISC may have to be redone. Because right now the FISC says no fiscal impact, so I just want to point that out.
You've got, Senator Evans got
a real brief question before this bill goes by. Is your intent when you say voter integrity that like someone would be knocking on my door to find out if I'm really alive, a voter or something? What are you going to do with the information exactly?
So, Mr. Chairman, Senator Evans, the intent of this bill is to empower the people to
what
ensure
will the people
fair,
do with the list?
free. Well, I can tell you that there is a desire for some groups. They want to do canvassing efforts to
they want to knock on my
verify the
door?
register votes. Well, all groups that are for nonprofit groups, that's what the GOP groups do. That's what the Democratic Party does. They knock on doors too. So I don't see there's any difference. If a citizen is knocking on your door or a member of a political party, there's really no difference.
I think that goes exactly to the point Senator Bill and Senator Reeves were hitting on, that there's no purpose to find. So if we'll take that back for a day.
Yes, sir.
Or for a week and see if you can come up with some language. Before I get to your next bill, Senator McClellan, you had 495 and you wanted that to go by for the day? Okay, without objection, that bill will go by for the day. Senate Bill 133 is the next one you've got, Senator Chase.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a new concept for this committee. And so what this bill has to do with the creation of a more secure ballot, and I actually have a copy that I'd like to, if it's permissible to the chairman, that I could pass so that people would have a tangible object that they could look at while I'm presenting the bill. Mr. Chairman, really the desire here is just to reassure voters' confidence in their elections. And if they have the ability to trace their ballot on Election Day, the intent is it will restore that confidence. I traveled to Texas with Representative Mark Fincham out of Arizona, and this is actually called the Arizona Ballot Project. And it is trying to make sure that our ballot is more secure. It's a creation and introduction of a brand new ultra-secure paper ballot with state-of-the-art security features to prevent fraud and help restore our faith in our elections. And there are a number of different certifications, including ISO 27001, ISO 17025, ISO 9001. And if you want me to go into the discussion, I will be happy to provide that information. But for now, I will go ahead and skip that portion of my information. What we want to do is make sure that voters, when they go to cast their vote on Election Day, that they can actually follow their ballot. Now, with this ballot, there is actually a serial number that is attached to the ballot, but your personal information is not contained in that. So it protects the privacy of the individual, but allows them to track via serial number and a QR code their individual ballot. They can see what it goes from the post office. If you were to mail in a ballot, they can follow it through the process and see that their vote was cast. This is actually already being implemented in Arizona by Representative Fincham, who we're actually trying to get on the phone in case you guys have any questions. He's going to be here as an expert witness. The problem that we're trying to address here, Mr. Chairman, is really this in a nutshell. Many voters in my district and across Virginia went to cast their vote on Election Day, and someone had already cast their vote for them. Now, we don't know exactly why, but it's very concerning to me. Hundreds, reports of widespread discrepancies across Virginia. And, and I mentioned earlier some issues in Henrico. I had a Spotsylvania County election official who refused to certify an election. And, according to a November 16, 2020 Geller report, there were multiple reversals and proportional vote entries on election night. And I'm not going to get into detail about elections gone by, but I really just want to emphasize the committee. I've done a lot of research on this. I have flown to Arizona, flown to Texas to try to figure out how we can restore voter integrity and give these voters that confidence they need that it's a safe, secure election. The creator of this ballot that you're looking at is Arizona State Representative Mark Fincham. He's a former police officer, investigator, who came up with an innovative idea to restore voter confidence.
Senator Chase, do you have confidence that we achieved the right result in the election in 2021? Do you think there was fraud in 2021?
Mr. Chairman, I actually do believe that there were some, I'm not going to label it as fraud because until we do a full forensic audit, I would be very.
So you would favor a forensic audit not only for 2020, but for 2021 as well?
I think we need to have the option to have full forensic audits, which are very different from risk limiting audits, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Chairman.
For getting off topic, but Senator Peake's got a question.
Well, then is Mr. Piper still here?
I'm sure he is.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, I need a little background on what our actual absentee ballots have on them. I have heard that they have a barcode. I would like to confirm with Mr. Piper if I could.
Well, this is not all. This doesn't just relate to absentee ballots, does it?
No, this is
every ballot.
And if I could, Mr. Chairman, if I could finish presenting my bill, I think I probably answer a lot of those questions if that's okay.
Well, all right. Sorry,
Okay.
Mr. Piper.
That's good. Don't go away. Oh, my phone is locked. Okay. So, so one of the things that I want to emphasize that's different from the way it is currently, and I think this will answer Senator Peake's question, is that we're making every ballot image a public record available to everyone all the time. And we are putting sunshine on something that is in need of a great disinfectant. There's no reason not to do this, really. Adding currency-grade fraud countermeasures similar to that of the U.S. Treasury, meaning that they have UV light reactive bills. Now, there's a flashlight you can actually shine on that ballot that you have, and you can see the watermark. It's considered a countermeasure similar to that of the U.S. Treasury. And meaning they have UV light reactive bills from the dollar bill to the 5 to the 10, and you get the point. You'll notice stripes, fluorescence, all matters of countermeasures, and after all, aren't our ballots just as valuable as our money? The cost, I know somebody's going to ask me the cost, Mr. Chairman, is about 25 cents a ballot. I have actually underestimated the cost. It's at about a little over $1 million. If you take into account the last presidential election where 4.4 million ballots were cast.
So this bill, if there's a motion to report, it'll have to report and re-refer to finance.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you finished?
I have 3 concluding remarks.
Okay.
And I'll be quick. Voting and peaceful exchange of power is the foundation of our constitutional republic. We as legislators must ensure that voters have confidence in the election process, that it is fair, transparent, and that all parties can trust the results to be correct. We, on this committee, I know, want the voters to know their voice was heard and give them confidence in the election process. If voters feel their voice is heard, that the election process is fair and transparent, they can trust those results and move on. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, okay, Mr. Piper, if you could explain how the design of the ballot is made now and who makes those decisions? I mean, does the General Assembly outline that in another code section, or?
Mr. Chairman, the design of the ballot is lightly talked about in the code, and then the State Board of Elections passes the ballot standards for how a ballot is to be set up when designed.
Have you looked at the sample ballot that Senator Chase had?
I have not. I have not. No.
Well, would you say that her cost of putting one of those little things on every one of our ballots, one of those stamps, and that the vendor, or printer or vendor shall be ISO 27001 certified, ISO 17025 certified, or ISO 9001:2015 certified. The cost of doing all that would be $1 million?
Mr. Chairman, I can't say for sure. I would be a significant increase over what the localities pay now.
Okay, and the localities would end up paying for this?
100% localities are responsible for the purchase of ballots.
Okay, so Senator Chase is proposing this unfunded mandate.
No, I have a budget amendment.
Yeah, but it's, you want the state to pay for it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Bell.
just doing the math in my head, I think that you're counting for the math, for instance, on just the gubernatorial race, but there's many more elections than that.
That was the presidential election.
If we looked, okay, only the presidential, but if we added up every other one, I think it's going to be a much higher number. And we had, 3.1 million people voted last year, about 3.2 million, so 25 cents per. And then if you add up the House of Delegates every 2 years, congressional, I think it's in local elections, it's much higher. I was going to ask a question, but the other question I was going to ask is this an unfunded mandate to localities? It sounds like it is, unless we were to do some sort of a budget amendment where we gave the money down. But I see in the budget amendment, they say it's basically it would be passed to localities, but they don't give a precise number.
Mr. Chairman, and to answer Senator Bell's question, I did submit a budget amendment, and it's actually should be $10 million the first year in the general fund, and then $5 million in the general fund the second year, which is actually grossly underestimated, unless I'm looking at something incorrectly. I see your eyes.
That's a really big number, though, bigger than what you said before.
Senator McClellan has a question.
That's how much my budget amendment is, just to be clear. But the actual amount, and I've had this verified by Representative Fincham in Arizona, where we would be getting the ballots from the same vendor, I would imagine, and the cost is 25 cents a ballot. And I took into account in my estimate the presidential election, figuring that would be the largest turnout. And that would include all the down ballot races as well. And there's a way to flip it on the back. And there should be a copy here, which I brought, and I apologize, I don't have more copies. And I will need to get that one back.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to ask a question about something that Senator Chase said in her testimony, which I think you've also alluded to in the press, that you have several incidents of people engaging in voter fraud and voting and claiming to be someone they're not. Are you aware that in the Voting Rights Act of Virginia that we passed last year, that we authorized the Attorney General to investigate such incidents and
yes,
bring charges or bring a lawsuit against
Yes.
anyone who violates? Have you provided any of these incidents to the Attorney General for investigation?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator McClellan, yes. Actually, I have followed up with our current Attorney General, and that is coming. Thank you.
Is that, your questions are complete? Senator Peake.
I was going to speak to the bill.
Well, you can do
Is
that.
it too
That's
early?
fine.
Go ahead. All right. And I appreciate the comments from my far right on the cost. And I would just say, I know the political situation we're in with what's going on after the 2020 election and the national mood and maybe the mood in the Commonwealth. And I am not commenting on what happened in 2020 or what happened in 2021. If there's an audit of 2020, there ought to be an audit of 2021. I fully agree with that. And I'll say there's been no evidence or proof of any problems in our election in 2020. But what we have and what's happened in other states is because someone lost an election and there have not been uniform standards of ballots or storing of ballots or photographing of ballots or tracking of ballots, it has allowed the person that lost that election to cause doubt across our entire country and in our state about our electoral process. Now, we didn't cause it, but it is out there. and to pretend that it is not out there is a substantial mistake on our part. And as legislators, it is our job to make sure that the public has confidence in our elections. And running elections is one of the things that the Commonwealth does. Mr. Piper is an employee of the Commonwealth. It is one of the most important things that we do. If the general public does not have confidence in how our elections are run, we lose the confidence of the public. And the bill may be $10 million this year and a couple million, whatever it is. How much money was spent in this governor's election? 70 million maybe from you? I don't have the numbers. Somebody out there's got the numbers. $140 million spent on the governor's election. How much was spent on some of these House of Delegates races? Millions. Senate races coming up. Going to be millions. The congressional races, oh my gosh, what is going to happen in number 7 and number 10 and number 2? The money that is going to pour in from out of state, nationwide, hundreds and hundreds of millions are going to be spent on our elections. And so when you look at the total amount of money, and in a presidential election, my goodness gracious, how much is spent. So when you look at the cost of maintaining the integrity of our elections so that somebody who is a sore loser can't come in and say, oh, they did this, they found that, I don't believe that came from China, and I want to look for bamboo on it. You know, this bill actually makes sense where you have a watermark on the ballot, where if you have absentee ballots, you have a barcode so that sore loser can't come up and challenge this election because every ballot's on that paper. It's got the mark on it. We can look at them. I am dealing with the reality we are in. It is not the reality I created, but it is where we are. And you look at the amount of money we spend on elections. You look at how important it is to the Commonwealth to trust the integrity of our elections. I submit that this is a good bill, and the amount of money is worth it for the confidence of the Commonwealth.
Okay, well, not yet. But you're done. Let's do.
Mr. Chairman, may I just make one quick comment?
Okay.
For the pleasure of the committee, I have on the phone in the queue, I have Arizona Representative Mark Fincham, who is the creator and the founder behind this anti-fraud measure. And he is on the phone and available. He can answer any of your questions that.
But you know, even though the public is concerned about the 2020 election, but they have full faith in the 2021 election.
Correct.
There are no instances of fraud that you know of.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to tell you that I was censured in the Senate because I do believe that there was fraud in Virginia, and I'm happy to sit down with you and members of your committee. I'm actually scheduling a meeting as we speak with the governor and the attorney general to go over those findings, and I would be happy to include you in that, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
well, let's do 3 minutes aside then, and all people who want to speak in favor of this bill, have at it.
If you are in the Zoom room and would like to speak in favor of this bill, please raise your hand electronically now. Mr. Chairman, there are multiple speakers.
Okay, well, they have a total of 3 minutes.
Hello again. I'm Jackie Hevener, Nelson County. I represent Virginia Patriots Unite, which was an organization that sprang up out of the 2020 fraud that happened. And I can verify that there are many people that have said that they've gone to vote and their vote was already cast. We have also checked in different places. We've checked on addresses. We've gone there. There were empty lots of people that said that they were registered to vote there. But I digress. As far as 2020, I'm also saying audit every single election.
Yeah. Were the people that were, you're talking about people in Nelson County that
I'm talking about
the ballots were already cast?
I'm talking about people all across the Commonwealth.
Well, but the people in Nelson County, did you report those to the Commonwealth Attorney?
Mm-hmm.
Nelson County, you did. And what was the organization you said you represented?
Virginia Patriots Unite.
Virginia Patriots Unite. Well, thank you very much.
Yes, absolutely. We've actually talked on the phone several times. I think several of us have. But as far as this, instead of arguing about the cost that I'm paying for, to make sure that my ballot gets to where it's supposed to be going, scrap the machines and stick with the ballots instead. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am. You had other-
Representative Fincham is on the line.
Okay, Representative Fincham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are you able to hear me, sir?
Yes, sir, we can.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I really appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today on behalf of this legislation. The fact of the matter is, no state that we have been able to find has an audit trail for ballots. Not an audit trail that can be reviewed, that can be inspected. That's one of the things that we found in the Maricopa County audit, which, as you know, was extremely expensive. We're now engaged in public policy decisions here in Arizona that may actually relate to what your endeavor is there. One of the things that we did not have is watermarks on ballots. So when we spoke with the folks who were doing the actual audit work, they were telling us that they were able to find as many as 10 different types of paper from the same election. And after a number of hours, the people who were hand inspecting these came back with a tactile memory, if you will. They began to feel the difference in papers, and they also noticed that a certain kind of paper appeared to have pre-filled bubbles. Now, whether that makes it into the report or not, is it anecdotal? We're simply relating the information that individuals told us. So the issue for us, and I think you probably will face the same issue, we can't say whether there were or were not counterfeit ballots in our system. Certainly they had the right size, the right questions, but there were some irregularities that individuals spotted, and this is a public policy move to make sure that we shut off that potential avenue of discrepancy in the future. Now, as far as the audit trail goes, by printing ballot blanks that are not controlled by the ballot printer, but by a business, frankly, that works for U.S. Treasury and is able to employ the same kind of countermeasures that we have in our currency, that gives you the opportunity to create that audit trail that you were likely missing. And then, of course, the last thing is the QR code, which provides an opportunity for the voter to really see their ballot image after the election. That is the number one call I get in my office, sir.
Thank you very much, Representative Sykes. Senator Evans got a question, and then we have a bunch more speakers that I'm going to ask to just identify themselves and any group they represent. But
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, I wanted to ask about the unique barcode or QR code on the ballot and how that would go against, if it would go against the right to a secret ballot. Does it allow the registrar or any election official to be able to tell how you voted?
No, sir, it does not. In fact, that's an outstanding question. We're getting that question here in Arizona. That QR code is scanned by the voter. Only the voter knows that there is an association of that number with their ballot and their name. Now, the intention is with this QR code is that when the ballot image is scanned in, that number will be associated with the record. But by that time, the ballot has been separated from the envelope that would associate the vote with the person, and it is in the general population stream of ballots that are being imaged. There is no way for the government to be able to track who the voter is associated with that number. Unless, of course, somebody has a mind that can read QR codes, and I haven't run into anybody like that yet.
Thank you very much, Representative Flincham. Now, there are a bunch of other people that need to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And I would like you to just identify yourself, identify where you're from, and state, if you represent a group, please state that. But there are a lot of people that want to speak in favor of this, and we're going to begin with Kelly Price.
I'm not in favor.
Well, that's okay. Okay, well, you're on the other side then. Put her in opposition. We'll get to you in just a second then. Chris Holmes. Chris Holmes.
Chris Holmes, please unmute.
Hi, my name is Christopher Holmes. I ran for the House of Delegates in District 72. I've been an officer of elections in the 2020 election. I ran in 2021. I work in information technology, so I know a little bit about security. In 2021, we had 1,400 ballots sent to the incorrect district 68, and another 1,400 sent to district 56. That's a total of 2,800 ballots floating around out there that could not be canceled because they didn't have barcodes on them. So I'm in favor of this bill. I think it disenfranchises the voters.
We just don't have time. You've identified yourself. I mean, now we're up to Diana Howard.
Hi, I'm Diana Howard. I'm the chair of the Virginia Beach Tea Party, and we are in favor of this bill.
Okay.
How many billions do
Thank
you
you,
have
ma'am.
in surplus?
Thank you, Paul Lott. Paul Lott.
Paul Lott, please unmute and begin your testimony.
Paul Lott. Okay, Ken Lubeck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Ken Lubeck. I'm with an organization of nonpartisan IT people. We support this bill, and the city of San Francisco provides ballot images to all citizens.
Where do you live,
tonight.
Mr. Lubeck? Where are
I
you
live
from?
in Virginia Beach, Virginia.
Okay, thank you, sir. David Lopez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. David Lopez, Fairfax County, Virginia, in favor of this bill.
Okay, thank you very much. Jonathan LaRoe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My name is Jonathan LaRoe. I live in Haymarket, Virginia. I have worked with Ken. I've worked with a number of different grassroots organizations as well, and I fully support this bill. I think it's a great bill.
Thank you very much. Elizabeth Sykes.
Hi, Sykes from Accomack County, and I fully support this bill.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Teresa Langike. Yeah.
Ms. Lang, like you are muted.
Sorry, it's Teresa Langell, and I live in Virginia Beach. I am the membership chair for the Virginia Beach Tea Party, but I'm calling as a citizen as well, and I'd like to support this bill.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Okay, Patricia Marsalia.
Thank you. In Arlington, Virginia.
No, ma'am, we've already had, I just want you to represent a group.
Sir, I know what you represent. I know what you want. I'm a Christian. I represent every Christian who stands for truth. Okay,
thank you, ma'am. Okay, the people that are opposed. And we have Kelly Price.
I'm in Burke, Virginia. I oppose this bill. Voter confidence would be higher if they would quit saying false stuff about the voter elections.
Okay. Thank you very much. Are there others? You've got a few people in the room, okay?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, James Heel with Fairfax County. This would represent a significant unfunded mandate to localities. And I also do want to note that localities print more ballots than the number of voters that vote in an election, just in case there are any issues to make sure that there are no shortages of ballots at precincts. So I believe the cost estimate would be a little bit higher than the proposed budget amendment. Additionally, the code already requires in 24.2619 to affix the seal of the electoral board on each printed ballot. So we're not quite sure what that is. How is that different from the watermark required by this legislation? Thank you.
Thank you.
Deb Wake, President, League of Women Voters of Virginia. We oppose this bill. The underlying premise is that there might be significant voter fraud is baseless. Even if there is evidence of fraud, though, it is unwise to enact a bill that has such detailed technical requirements as those stated in this bill. The Department of Elections already follows a better approach, which is to align the Virginia's election security requirements, which are with highly regarded, widely used, and expert maintained standards that evolve as new technologies and security risks arise. The Department of Elections also partners with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, the Virginia Information Technology Agency, and other entities to continually strengthen the security posture of the state's election infrastructure processes and policies. We support ongoing improvements to secure all election systems, but this bill does not achieve that goal. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Paul Teal from Hanover County. I'm here to speak in favor of the bill.
Mr. Teal, all the people that spoke in favor have already spoken. You can identify yourself. You've done that. You represent a group.
I represent a group, we're buying machines and breaking down the machines to find out what's in a machine. I want to show you just one quick thing, not to take a lot of your time. NBC, nothing but conservatives, said in last year, online and vulnerable, experts find nearly 3 dozen voting systems connected to the internet. That's why we're here. This right here is just 20 pages of a 255-page manual that comes with the Dominion machines.
Okay.
They're very complex to set up, and the registrars aren't doing it. Needs to be done.
Okay, thank you, sir. We've got more people in favor that want to speak. We've already had 3 minutes on. Oh, no, it didn't. They put 5. They only used a minute 44. I wasn't going to give them 5.
Yes, Dennis Black, Virginia Beach, Chesapeake.
And just identify yourself. Tell me you're for the bill, and if you represent a group.
For the bill and for the voting computers to be eliminated going forward, along with the watermarking of the ballots and the things that were talked about here. They aren't voting machines, they're voting computers, and there will never be fair and transparent elections unless we remove them. And Virginia could be the first state to do it, to lead the way.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Hello, Heather Mitchell, Integrity Alliance, and I am in favor of the bill, and I don't know why you guys, as representatives of the people, do not do what the people say.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
One more. Bobby Thomas. I am for it, Chesterfield County, and an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Okay, the bill is before the committee.
And Mr. Chairman, I would just say for less than the cost of a postage stamp, we can secure our elections. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, substitute motion, move to PPI.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, the substitute motion takes precedence. Open the roll. All in favor, vote yay.
Ayes 9, noes 6.
Okay. Senator Chase, I saw Senator Stanley here a little bit ago. He's up.
I would be happy to take a break.
Okay. Well, the next one I had, other than was Senator Chase's bill, or rather Senator Stanley's bill came up a good bit ago. And then I've got a bill with Senator Suderline that I asked if he wanted to take a look at, and he wasn't really interested in that. Okay, well, Senator Chase, you've got, what, 2 bills left, 3 bills left?
Mr. Chairman, I have 4 bills left.
Okay. I've got 234, 236. You do have 4 bills. I apologize. Okay, 234.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill has to do with addressing our permanent absentee voter list, and it's simply just repealing that code section where it was created in 2020. And my concern is this, is that permanent absentee ballots, they are not as secure as when someone's voting in person. Examples include attempting to vote more than once, attempting to vote using the name of another person, and attempting to vote while being knowingly and eligible to do so. What happens with this permanent absentee list is the opportunity to use the names of people who have died or moved because there are no checkpoints to ensure they are legitimately on the permanent list, and it's wide open, Mr. Chairman. My understanding is that once someone, a citizen or a voter, signs up to be on this permanent voter list, is that they continue to receive the actual live ballot every single year until they put in writing that they no longer desire to receive that. And this is a growing promotional tool that is used by certain parties, certain third-party organizations.
Could you identify some, please?
I don't want to be targeted by those groups. If you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to keep it very neutral, if that's okay with you.
I need to know if there are instances where this has been abused.
Okay. So there have been special programs where they actually call up, and constituents of mine have been getting phone calls, and they said, if you sign up to be put on this list, you will automatically receive your ballot by mail every year, a live ballot. And you never have to worry about going to the polls again, basically. My concern is this. If they move, if they have a change of address, and they don't submit it to the State Board of Elections, they don't submit it to the registrar's office, are we going to continue to send those live ballots to potentially thousands of people who are on this increasingly growing permanent voter list? Is my concern that we have potentially, if this program continues to grow, will we have thousands and thousands of active ballots that are being mailed out to voters all across Virginia? And I understand it's a recent program that's being promoted, but if that continues to expand, my concern, not only as a legislator but as a concerned citizen, is where is the chain of custody for that ballot? So that is the concern that I'm attempting to the best of my ability to try to avoid happening. And Virginia's had a history of issues with ballots, and even the Democratic Party of Virginia filed the lawsuit, if you remember correctly, with 300,000 votes that they said never made it to the election. So this is I see as a bipartisan issue. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I will answer any questions the committee has.
Are there members of the panel with questions for Senator Chase? Was that Senator McClellan?
Yes, it's either for Senator Chase or if Mr. Piper is still in the room. As I understand it, based on legislation that we passed, when an individual moves, goes to DMV to change their address, that unless they opt out, their voter registration is automatically changed as well. Is my recollection correct?
I'm going to allow the expert that you all trust to answer that question.
Mr. Chair, Senator, yes. Automatic voter registration, automatic updates at the DMV. I would also point out that if on the permanent absentee list, if the ballot is mailed and it comes back undeliverable, they're automatically removed from the list. They go in the confirmation process. We have a robust and very, very successful list maintenance program here in Virginia. So,
And just to follow up, I want to emphasize something that you just said. Under the process in place now, which I think we changed with the bill last week, if I'm remembering correctly, voters who have died, that information is used to remove those voters from the list on a regular basis. Is that correct?
that is, Mr. Chairman, yes, that's absolutely correct.
So there is already a process in place to deal with concerns of anyone who has signed up, opted in. Well, let me back up. It's an opt-in for an individual voter to be on the permanent list to receive an absentee ballot, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
And if someone opts in and dies, there's already a mechanism in place to remove that person from the rolls based on updates received from the Office of the Medical Examiner regularly throughout the year, correct?
That is correct.
And there's already a process. Thank you, Mr.
Senator
Chairman.
McClellan.
And there's already a process in place if someone moves that their registration will be automatically updated when they go to the DMV to change their driver's license or ID materials, which they're going to need to do just about anything else in the Commonwealth. Is that correct?
That is also correct. And if I might, Mr. Chairman, if we're members of ERIC, so if an individual moves to another state, member state, we get information that they've moved, remove them from the list, going through that process. Also, we're required by federal law to run the National Change of Address Database program. We do that at least annually. So anybody who has moved anywhere in the country, we're notified, and then we go through the process of confirming their move according to federal law.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other senators with questions for the sponsor? Okay, we're going to take 3 minutes for each side. So first we'll hear from the proponents who are in favor of Senate Bill 234. Do we start with those in the virtual world? Or, I'm sorry, why don't you, the
Hi,
woman
how
at the
are
podium.
you?
Hello.
Really good. Okay, I'm going to be nicer than I was last time, okay? I promise. But if those regulations are in place, that it is certainly not robust because I've already run across people that have said otherwise. Honestly, people are not stupid. If they want to vote, they should be able to take care of it themselves instead of having to worry about the government, because the government's already way too involved in our society as it is. But also to speak to Senator Peake. Hi, Senator Peake. I like what you said earlier. You said that if roles were reversed, there would be a lot of different changes going on. I can guarantee that if colleagues that are not in favor of transparency in our elections, we are going to get rid of you. And I'm going to drive about an hour and a half back so I can get back to my babies. Okay, have a good day.
Thank you. Are there others in the room who'd like to speak for the bill? Please come forward, sir, and introduce yourself.
My name is Steve Quinnen. I live in Franklin County. I heard a discussion here of methods used to maintain voter rolls. The question in front of you is not voter rolls, it's the absentee mailing list. They have to be tied together.
Thank you, sir. Are there others in the room to speak for the bill? Are there others on? Okay, please come forward, ma'am.
Heather Mitchell, I just wanted to say that I support this bill.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Bobby Thomas, Chesterfield County, and I support this bill.
Thank you.
Becky Hendricks, Hanover County, and I support this bill. And what do we have to lose with
Thank
all
you, ma'am.
of this?
Thank you. Are there others waiting virtually to speak in support? Paul Lott, we have 5 speakers and about 1:25 left, so if you could be fairly brief in your comments, that would be helpful. Mr. Lott?
Mr. Lott, please unmute and begin your testimony.
This is Melody Clark, but I am in favor of this bill as well.
Thank you. Mr. Michael Hirsch?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm in support of this bill.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Wheeler?
Yes, sir. I'm in favor of this bill. I represent Virginia for fair elections. There are many people in our society that are quite mobile. Students move, military moves, people move frequently with change of jobs, and they do not notify the DMV, particularly if they move out of state. They have no reason to notify the DMV. The ERIC is not a 100% system. The national change of address was not done in Virginia until after the 2020 election, so it had no bearing. People need to know that if their ballot is mailed out, it goes to the right person. If you're at a house that gets a ballot, some nefarious person may vote that ballot. We need to prevent that by not having a permanent absentee voting list. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got just a brief time left, but if Mr. Vic Nichols would speak in support of the bill.
Thank you. I support this bill because I have actually been approached by voters when I've been behind the poll book, and they've told me people have died, people have this, all kinds have moved and things have happened. It's been several months and they're still on the system. So yes, there are problems that need to be fixed. This bill will do that. Thank you.
Okay, we're running a little short on time, but Mr. Ken Lubeck, you're next if you'd like to identify yourself and make a brief statement.
Sure. Ken Lubeck, Virginia Beach, and I'm an example of a person who moves but doesn't go to DMV to get a different driver's license. So I took a proactive step to do it myself with my registration. But I support this bill, and it just makes things better. I mean, we need to improve the voter rolls.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lei Shuping.
Yeah, I support this bill, and it's my favorite.
Excellent.
I live
Thank
in the
you.
Ashburn. I live in the Ashburn.
Thank you for being here. Next, we have Diana Howard.
Diana Howard, Chair of the Virginia Beach Tea Party. We were in favor of the bill, and I work the polls every year, and I had a lady come up to me with a letter from the voter registrar saying her husband was removed from the voter rolls the year before because he was dead, and she still got an absentee ballot.
Thank you. Are there opponents to the bill in the room? Would like to come forward, Mr. Heo?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, James Heal with Fairfax County. Currently, Fairfax County has over 50,000 voters who avail themselves of this service. The majority of those voters have health and mobility challenges, so we ask that you oppose this bill.
Thank you. Are there other opponents in the room? Are there any opposed online?
If you are in the Zoom room and would like to speak in opposition to the bill, please raise your hand electronically now. Mr. Chairman, we have one individual, Mary McDaniel.
Okay, Ms. McDaniel, please tell us why you're opposed to the bill.
I'm Mary McDaniel. I live in Fairfax, Virginia, and I am opposed to the bill. I think it hurts people who are disabled and use this as the way to get their ballots on a regular basis.
Thank you. If there are no other speakers, are there any other questions or motions from members of the committee? There's a motion to report.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Senator McClellan.
I believe that there is Galen Knoyton with the NAACP has her hand up in the Zoom. At least she's texted me to say that she does.
Is Ms. Galen Knoyton in the Zoom room?
Senator, I do not see her hand.
Okay, I'm sorry, we're not seeing her in the Zoom room.
Okay, thank you.
So we had a motion to report. Was there any other motions? Okay.
PBI. Motion to PBI.
There was a motion and a second, and then did I hear another comment?
Mr. Chair, I move to pass by indefinitely.
Okay, substitute motion takes precedence, so the vote will be whether to PBI. Vote green if you'd like to PBI, red if not.
Ayes 8, no 6.
Okay, the vote fails, the bill fails 8-6, or the motion carries to PBI 8-6. Senator Stanley is here. Would you mind if we took him and then came back to you?
Absolutely.
Senator Stanley, are you prepared to present? Well, we'll find out when we. Which bill is this?
On your kill list, it's number 80.
85, it looks like it. SB 85 or a different bill?
80. 85, I believe, was.
Oh, SB 80, okay.
Oh, 80.
This is about elections officials, whether or not they can accept certain gifts or funding. And please let us know about the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Senate Bill 80, which I have filed with this, with the Senate and referred to this committee, basically does one of two things. What we've seen in past elections, and certainly we've seen a lot of dark money that goes into the elections themselves, into the candidates themselves. What this does is stop the dark money and 501c3s that don't have to report donors or who gives them money from giving money to the state board, each electoral board, and any offices of the general registrar. And that way they do not accept any monetary value. It says money, grants, property, or services by a private individual or non-governmental agency for the purpose of funding voter education and outreach programs, voter registration programs, and any other expense incurred in the conduct of our elections. It does not prohibit expenses incurred by private entities that facilitate polling places, satellite polling places, and the like. Mr. Chairman, what we have seen is that this goes both ways. This is not a partisan issue. What this is quite frankly an issue of the integrity of election when it comes to funding our government agencies which administer the election. I would assert to you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, that there is no instance where I can find when a private individual can give millions of dollars, as was given to the state of Virginia, to its registrars, to its electoral entities, to assist it, because we, the government, we, the legislature, have been given the authority to appropriate those monies for the conduct of elections, local and state and federal. And we shall execute those elections without the influence of those individuals or not-for-profit agencies or entities, which then intrude into the election process. And I can assert to you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, they do not do so for the integrity of the election. They do not do this because they just want to help. Usually there's a political agenda, and it comes from both sides, Republican, Democrat, liberal, and conservative. Quite frankly, the conduct of the elections, which you all have repeatedly said in other bills, is the purview of this government. It should stay the purview of this government at the state and local level. So that is the bill, Mr. Chairman, and I thank you for your time.
Questions for Senator Stanley? Senator McClellan, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Stanley, as I read this bill, it's pretty broad, and do I read it correctly that it would prohibit any local registrar or the Department of Elections from accepting a grant from, for example, Microsoft or Google designed to upgrade voting equipment with cybersecurity software?
Mr. Chairman, I'd answer the gentlelady, my friend, by saying the way it is written, I would think so, because it's broken into two things where that money cannot be. Voter education and outreach programs, registration programs, and then the catch-all that I think would fall as lawyers we know would probably be used to try to say that that is not possible, would be any other expense incurred in the conduct of elections. And so one would think applying security implementation and measures would be that. But again, Mr. Chairman, I'd answer the gentlelady also by saying I find very suspect when a corporation wants to enter into the political realm under those purposes. If it was a part of a program that this state paid for, then that's fine, and this bill does not prohibit that. But when entities, non-governmental entities, start volunteering, then they are controlling some aspect of the conduct of an election. And I think it is fundamental fairness that we must strive to have to make sure that this is an election by the people, for the people. And I think this bill goes to that. But
follow-up question, Mr. Chair.
Senator McClellan.
So, and let me give you an example. So you would have no problem if a local registrar or the Department of Elections purchased software, but if the federal government, say, I think they did this under the Help America Vote Act, if my memory serves correctly, if the federal government were to create a grant program that included grants that the federal government paid to Microsoft or Google, so Microsoft or Google are not donating the services directly to the registrar, but indirectly through that grant program, as I read your bill, it would prohibit that as well. Is that your intent?
Mr. Chairman, I would answer the gentlelady by saying, no, it's not my intent. In fact, I think what it says here is that the state board doesn't solicit, use, dispose of money, grants, property from the non-governmental entity.
For services.
Or for services. From a non-governmental entity or an individual. If the federal government is the entity which then procures those services, then it does not fall into either an individual or non-governmental entity, and therefore such would be proper.
Are you through with your question, Senator?
Yeah.
Senator Vogel.
Mr. Chair, I would just, if I may, make the distinction that if you were procuring services for something like Microsoft services or hardware or software, I think as a public policy matter, we on this committee would want that to go through VITA. We would want that to go through the procurement process. And if there was a federal grant component that could come through the federal government, and I don't think, to Senator McClellan's question, that this legislation would frustrate that. I think the goal here is, and I think this is a worthy goal, is to remove any of the taint or even the appearance of the taint and any kind of a solicitation process that operates independent of the ordinary process, so that there is no accusation or allegation that Republican-leaning groups are engaged in a way that would be improper and providing grant money or services, or partisan groups on the left, on the Democratic side, would be doing the same. And I think all of that is what we intend when we have a process set up through the Secretariat of Administration, through VITA, through the Department of Elections, through the State Board of Elections. We want that to be administered in a transparent process and not in a process through a 501c3 or a group where you really don't have any transparency when it comes to providing that kind of support. So I think it's actually a good bill, and I think that members on both sides of the aisle would want to support the bill. So I would hope that the committee would support it.
Okay, Senator Eben.
I think I understand the spirit of the bill. I just wanted to ask, if I might, Mr. Chair, a few questions about practical applications. First, Senator Stanley, do we know, is this happening now anywhere in Virginia, or is this just something you want to prevent?
No, as a matter of fact, Virginia, there's a company called CTCL. It was a 501c3. One of the main donors was, of course, Facebook page creator Mark Zuckerberg. They gave over $350 million to county and states throughout. And in fact,
in Virginia, though?
Gave it in Virginia. In fact, let's see, they gave grants to at least 39 of 133 counties in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And surprisingly enough, in those that were funded, only 14 of the 46 were of the 87 counties Trump won statewide. And so it went actually to counties where Trump did well. But quite frankly, it gave a bit of money to many states, including the Commonwealth of Virginia. So I have this number right here.
Can I interrupt to follow up, Mr. Chair?
Senator Eben.
Senator Stanley, what did they give the money for? Do we know?
Mr. Chairman, what I can do is, let's see, I can tell you that $3,968,221 were given to 38 counties. There is not a listing of exactly what they could or could not do with them, but some of the monies were utilized by some of the counties for temporary staffing support, vote-by-mail absentee voting equipment or supplies, election administration equipment, voting materials in languages other than English, security for office and polling locations, ballot drop boxes, drive-through voting, and nonpartisan voter education, and personal protective equipment for staff and for the cleaning expenses.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. One follow-up, if I might.
Senator Eben.
So I recognize that the election should be paid for by the government, but I do want to just make sure, the way I read your bill, I don't think it does anything that would interfere with, like, at Mount Vernon, they promote registration for new citizens. That wouldn't stop the Fairfax County Registrar from being on site or helping register new citizens, or a partnership with the USO to register service members or get them absentee ballots.
Mr. Chairman, I would answer the gentleman by saying that is not the intent of the bill, and that would not stop that, as far as I can tell.
Mr. Chair?
Senator Boyce goes next, but I wondered if there are instances where there are individuals, for example, that have given money for registration in Virginia that you're aware of.
Mr. Chairman, I would answer you, the chairman, by saying I'm just using probably the most recent things, but the problem is that there's no prohibition, so that may have occurred before.
Okay.
And I think, as Senator Evans said most succinctly, you know, the primacy of this government in a free, democratic government as this body is and our localities are, is that they are the ones that conduct the elections, both the cost and the administration and the execution. We should not have entities, corporations, 501c3s, or even individuals interfering with that primacy.
Okay, thank you so much. Senator Boyce has got a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would you be able to tell us again how much money was granted in Virginia in the 2020 cycle or the 2021 cycle?
Sure. Well, I'll give you what I have. Let's see. Just 1 second. In the last federal election, so that would have been
2020.
Trump and Biden, they gave $3,968,221. If you break it down now, I've got some of the, not all, but I've got some of the, let's say Fairfax County. Fairfax County received $1,431,950. They used $967,000 and change for temporary staffing and support, $59,850 for vote by mail, $102,000 for election administration equipment, $54,000 for voting materials in languages other than English, and $58,000 for security office and polling locations. They did not have any money allocated for ballot drop boxes and drive-through voting. And while that's nice, and it kind of takes a little bit of the financial burden of running an election off, that's our obligation. This government has that obligation. And that way, we're not having outside influences of any sort from any direction in the conduct of our elections, and that's most important.
So, Mr.
Senator
Chair,
Boysko.
thank you. So, follow-up question. In the absence of having the state funding, what do we propose to? I have Bristol's application in front of me. Just I happen to. They were asking for at least $5,000 for a laptop and other supplies. So, what do we tell those localities that don't have a tax base, that are not going to get it from the state? What do we tell them that we're going to do for them to help them cover those costs?
Well,
we often use a public-private partnership, right? Like on a lot of things. So,
well, quite frankly,
how can we help?
I'm sorry, and I didn't mean to cut you off. Mr. Chairman, I'd answer the gentlelady by saying, then we should give them the money. Quite frankly, that is, again, if we're not able to give them the money that they need to conduct a free and fair election, then we're not doing our jobs correctly. Now, the funny thing is, if I looked, I was just kind of doing the numbers here real quick. The funny thing is here, of that $3 million, $3.8 million, Fairfax got a big chunk of it. And I don't know, and so that would have been, it went into actually one of the more wealthy counties. And when I was looking through the list here, Prince William County got $631,000 of that money. Loudoun County got $355,000. And so if you look, I'm doing the math here, for the Fairfax County, that is, the number that I gave you is $1.25 for every man, woman, and child that lives in the county.
Well, Mr. Chair, I just question, you're aware of the population in Northern Virginia, right? That the bulk of the population is in Fairfax County, Loudoun County, Prince William County, almost half of the population of the
Mr. Chairman, I'd answer the gentlelady by saying, having grown up there and lived in both Vienna, Fairfax City, and Loudoun County, I watched it grow from when I was a little guy all the way up until the time when I left to start my law firm with my mother. So I saw quite the explosion of population. Bearing that in mind, it is also one of the most affluent counties in the amount of taxes that it collects. And certainly its tax base is much different than, say, in Southside Virginia, where you reference in the cost of local costs for elections. Our family of four per capita income is $38,000 per family of four. And so that tax base organically is much smaller. In your areas in Northern Virginia, it's over 100 and some odd thousand. So for a family of four. Now, granted, cost of living is different too. But they have the abilities to make sure that free and fair elections are fully staffed, fully funded, and make sure that they get all the materials that they need to conduct them under the laws of the Commonwealth of Virginia as we've passed them. And so if we have then counties in rural areas, those are smaller populations, smaller voter turnouts as we've seen. I think a lot of them were surprised in the 2021 election at the higher turnout. But what we did not hear of, at least in those areas, was that the capacity was overwhelming to them or put them in a financial strait. So I just think we should take out all that dark money. Remember, Mr. Chairman, it's 501c3 money. You know and we know that none of the donors of 501c3 corporations, not-for-profit corporations, ever have to be disclosed. And that bothers me too. And I don't care where they come from the left, the right. It's really just about what is our obligation as a government. We are responsible for keeping us free. We're responsible for making sure that when it comes to the conduct of the election, that is done in a way that all of us are responsible and can be proud of how it's conducted.
Do we know that the money was spent in Virginia? Do we have any evidence that it was spent to influence the election, the outcome of the election?
Mr. Chairman, I'd answer you by saying it's not that I'm standing here that this was spent to influence the outcome of the election. I do not state that today. However, I think even as Senator Vogel said, the appearance that is there is it can be evident of maybe an attempt or a hope to influence the election, but at the same time, how much confidence does that give the voter when now we're having, Senator Deeds, your Senate election, District 9 is sponsored by DeWalt Tools. Do we have to wear racing suits with all the sponsors for our elected officials that service those things, saying these are the people that have paid for me to be here and conduct this election? It should be the Virginians who pay into the tax base, who conduct the elections and use their tax money to make sure.
And how many tax increases are you going to vote for to fund elections?
Mr. Chairman, I'd answer the gentleman by saying I haven't seen one yet for funding of the election, so I'll have to make that decision on a case-by-case basis. But to follow up with Senator Boyce, who I think makes a very good point, if we have underfunded areas, if we have something that threatens the ability to conduct a fair election because we're not staffing or we're not following the laws because we don't have enough money, then we have that obligation to remedy that. And quite frankly, Mr. Chairman, I would say that when we legalize skill games in Virginia, we can pay for all of our elections and won't have to use this.
Are there additional questions for Senator McClellan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me, would you be opposed, I see you have a sort of a safe harbor, for lack of a better word, to make clear this would not prohibit using a polling place that may happen to be at a private entity's location. You know, my concern really is an unintended consequence of a grant, like a government grant program. Would you be opposed to an amendment making clear that this would not prohibit a local board or general registrar from receiving funds from a government grant program that may just so happen to include funds donated into the fund?
Private sources or individuals?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'd answer the gentlelady by saying I would have no such objection, because that's not the intent.
Yeah.
It's in the same way, it's not an intent to block the services where, let's say, a registrar, a local registrar, needs to hire an outside company or entity, and they pay them. That doesn't stop that. It's when the money goes the different direction, the other direction, into our governmental entity that conducts the election. So I have no problem whatsoever with such an amendment, and would welcome it.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move that amendment in concept, and if Brooks could figure out a way to write it.
Okay, we've got a motion for an amendment in concept. Brooks, do you understand what the concept is?
Mr. Chairman, I think I'm pretty clear. So we want to make it so that the bill shall not be construed to prohibit a locality, the department, et cetera, state board, from accepting a government grant.
That may have been derived from a private entity
Yes.
or individual.
So for
partly or
example,
all
yeah.
derived.
So for example, we create funds all the time, like the Indigenous Peoples Fund, the School Construction Modernization Fund, that includes both direct appropriations, but also grants received from private entities. And I want to be sure that if it's a federal program or a state program or a local program that is one of those funds, that we're not inadvertently precluding them from using that money.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I think I can put that together.
Does everybody understand what the amendment's trying to do? All in favor of the amendment, say yes, or
Yes.
opposed, no? Okay, we've adopted the amendment. Okay, the bill's before the committee. Are there additional questions? If not, are there people that need to speak to this bill? And we'll give them about 3 minutes aside.
Yes.
Okay, come on. Yes, ma'am. Please identify yourself and tell us if you represent a group and tell us your position.
Yes, hi, my name is Nancy Smith. I'm with Middle Resolution PAC. I'm also a resident of Henrico County. We are in support of this bill. We believe that it's certainly prudent for registrars and for boards of supervisors to take on, as well as the state to take on the responsibility of administration of elections if and when localities are unable to afford the staff or the equipment. It would seem prudent that those boards of supervisors, city councils, town councils certainly communicate that information to their citizens, to the registrars, and to the state that they're unable to afford to do that without private funding. So we believe that there's full transparency in funding coming straight through the state or local government to the registrars and not through private entities where, again, in the case of a C3, that there is no disclosure of donors, and certainly the purpose could be construed as lacking in transparency and trust. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Okay, and we've got people in the virtual world.
Mr. Chairman, there are multiple speakers in the virtual world.
Okay, and multiple speakers, I would just advise you all that total you have 2 minutes and 5 seconds. So Kun Wang, please.
I'm in favor of this bill.
Okay, thank you, sir. La Shupang.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is, my family is from China. I'm proud to be a Virginia and an American. This is why I speak today in favor of the SB 80 because my voice should not be silenced by billions. You see, in the 2020 election, one entity gave the $3.7 million to give the government the office and their choice to swing on the election as they want. I cannot give this $3 billion to the government office to swing an election. So you would say that no one should be able to use the private money to inflate the government. You cannot see me? Understand what I said?
I understood what you said. You just contradicted the patron of the bill.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yes. I support this bill.
Okay.
This is my favorite bill.
Thank you, ma'am. Paul Lott, please.
No,
Why are you laughing at me?
No, we're not laughing at you.
Laughing at me.
Lott. And I would remind you that the total group of people have 50 seconds left. 50. So that basically allows you to identify yourself and tell us if you represent a group.
You know, my wife contradicts me and still likes me too. That's what it reminded me of.
Paul Lott.
I think he's understood.
Mr. Lott, please unmute and begin your testimony.
No, not about the letter.
I think we had this problem with Mr. Lott the last time he tried to testify.
There was a lot in the Bible.
Mr. Lott, are you there?
Xiaoling Strouder.
Yeah, my name is Charlene, and I live in Fairfax County. I fully support this bill. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Ned Jones. Ned Jones. Ned Jones. Patricia Marsalia. Ms. Marsalia, I know you're out there.
I'm here. I'm not leaving you.
Okay.
I will not leave you. All righty. Now I gotta say, at 935 South 23rd Street, 7 blocks from the Walter Reed Precinct, Senator Ed Ribbons knows about this, they received $49,000 from a PPP. And they have locations in Beijing, Shanghai, Sichuan, Budapest, and Fairfax. And then there was a man there with a Chinese 2-year visa at the precinct, and he used heavy videotape to videotape the last day of the election.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Marsalia. We're out of time, so I know we've got more speakers. I would ask you to identify yourself and whether you represent a group or not. Vic Nichols is the next speaker.
I don't just get money out of politics. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Scott Walker.
Yes, I'm Scott Walter from Sterling, Virginia, president of the Capital Research Center, which studies nonprofit fundings of elections. We have the complete data on what happened in 2020, but this is something that neither party's donors should be allowed to do. What happened last time can flip next time.
Okay, Jonathan LaRoe.
Thank you, Jonathan LaRoe, Haymarket. I support this bill.
Okay.
I think we need to get the money.
Thank you very much. Dr. Wheeler.
Barbara Wheeler, Virginia for Fair Elections. I too support this bill because we need to have full transparency of all of the funding.
Thank you very much. Okay, Senator Stanley, I think you were in great shape till your speakers undercut you there.
I have nothing to add.
But do you have nothing to add?
No.
Okay,
Mr.
the bill's
Chairman.
before the committee.
Mr. Chairman, before we vote, I just have to say that the one speaker did say the previous bill was her favorite bill, not this bill. And you can only have one favorite.
You know, every party needs a pooper, Mr. Chairman, and I certainly have that one today in my friend Senator Bell.
Okay, is the committee ready to vote? Open the roll. If you're for the bill, vote aye. Okay, Senator Chase, I'm going to let Senator Eben go next because he's got a 4 o'clock subcommittee.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Senator Eben, what's your bill number? Okay, turn your attention to Senator Eben. Senate Bill 273.
Haven't voted on the prevailing stuff.
Okay, well, wait till he's out of the room. Wait till he's out of the room.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, this is Senate Bill 273. We adopted a substitute last week, but I have another substitute which just adds a phrase or so that the clerk could make available, please. It's online now? Okay. So this would be the second substitute. This is the bill dealing with the...
So we need a motion to, on those of us who were on the prevailing side when we adopted the substitute, we need to reconsider that.
Mr. Chairman, so move.
Okay, is there a second to that? Okay.
Second.
All in favor of reconsidering, say aye. Aye. Okay, all in favor, okay. All in favor now of,
I move that we adopt the second substitute.
okay. Okay, so that's online, Brooks? Okay. The second substitute's online. Has everybody found it? Okay. Do we have a motion? Do we have a second to adopt that substitute? Okay, all in favor of adopting the second substitute, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this, to remind the committee, is the bill dealing with when you return an absentee ballot by mail, currently a witness signature is required. This would give an alternative way to return the ballot, which would be to include your birth date and the last 4 digits of your Social Security number. And we know during the pandemic, at least, when the rules changed in the course of the election, that there were some ballots that weren't counted because the governor's order expired, and some ballots just weren't counted because they didn't have a witness signature. So I would draw the body's attention to line 419 to 421 on page 16 of the substitute, which I'll read. It talks about the cure process and the verification of the absentee ballots, and it would say, the new language would say, such verification shall include matching any date of birth and last 4 digits of a Social Security number or assigned unique identifier provided as part of the voter affirmation against the information in the voter's record. And I would just ask counsel to verify that would, in fact, without that information, the ballot wouldn't be counted, but the voter would get a chance to cure the ballot if they were to have left it out. In other words, it could come in person or provide that information, so the ballot would be counted.
Mr. Chair, Senator Eben, yes, that's correct.
Thank you. So the bill's pretty simple. It provides this other alternative way to verify, and I think it's a secure way, and I ran the language by Senator Peake earlier. I'm hoping that we can support this as a bipartisan way to a voter to prove their identity when they return their ballot if they don't have a witness handy.
Senator Eben, I've not been able to get through the whole second substitute yet. It was basically a 4-page bill, and now it's a 16-page bill.
Well, the reason it's longer is, and I can ask counsel this, but I believe it's because we're entering the cured part of the process is where the language is. What we did is we wanted to satisfy Senator Peake by requiring that the verification would include the matching of the birth date and last 4 of social. Normally, they would do that through regulation, but just to make this hopefully a bipartisan project, it just ensures that it'll be verified. But there's not much new language, and maybe counsel could direct us if there's other new language.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, the original bill was only directed at creating the requirement that you allow the Social Security number to be used in lieu of the witness signature. It got substantially bigger when we put on the unique identifier portion because we needed to add section 24.2-404, which is in there twice because it has a change that happens later. So that was the bulk of the bill getting bigger. And then this last substitute added section 24.2-709.1, so we had to add another section, which increased it even more. So those are where the increases came, mostly getting all the sections to create the unique identifier and creating this new section for the verification.
Is there still a delayed enactment on some of it? Is that what you're suggesting?
Mr. Chairman, no. Section 24.2-404 it has portions that are effective until October 1st, 2022, and then portions that are effective after October 1st, 2022. So we want to make sure that the changes we're making for Senator Ebbins' bill are in both portions so that they are effective as of July 1st and then effective even when this section changes in October 1st.
Senator Peake, this includes what you wanted. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, and I want to, Chairman, and thank the patron. And so when we discuss this, I wanted to make sure, and Brooks, to make sure, the way this bill reads now, if someone submits an absentee ballot, they can either have a witness signature and it'll be counted, or they can put their birth date and the last four of their social security number, and then the registrar is directed to verify the birth date and the last four with the name of the voter. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Peake, yes, that's correct.
That sounds familiar to something that I've liked for a number of years. It never seems to make it out of here. And then, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Peake.
And then, so we have, that has to be verified to count. And then if it doesn't match exactly, then it comes in with the cure period that they call them. Is there a length of the cure period?
Before the election, no?
By Friday after, is it?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the cure can only occur before the Friday before the election. If it's after the Friday, then there's no opportunity to cure.
Okay, so if it doesn't match, they are notified and they can cure. All right, I want to thank the patron for making those changes.
Senator Spruill.
Senator, you sound like a Republican now.
No, this is providing.
This.
Yes.
So.
Why was a Republican?
You want to have the last four Social Security. You want to also put my birth date down and then verify it. So why can't you just have just the birth date or the last four? Why you got to have both?
The idea of having both was inspired from the 2021 Virginia Department of Elections report on alternatives to the witness signature requirement on absentee ballots. And it was my understanding that the Department of Elections work group composed of general registrars, electoral board members, and representatives from both the Republican and Democratic parties of Virginia. And they considered and evaluated alternatives to the witness signature. I think this is a happy compromise because people should remember their birth date and the last four of their social. So I think this is both allows people the flexibility not to have a witness present, but also allows people the confidence that the voter signed it.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Spruill.
In that case, we should have passed Senator Peake bill last year. That's the case.
That's another bill.
I'm not voting for it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chairman.
Senator Reeves.
I just had a quick question because I don't see it kind of designed. I know they're supposed to promulgate it, and maybe Mr. Piper can talk to what. Tell me what a unique identifier is. Is that a QR code? What does that look like? Is it a smiley face? Is it a... Right, I understand that. If you could have just explained it to me, I'd like to know what it is.
We know that there are 400 people in Virginia that are registered to vote that don't have have Social Security numbers.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So every voter is actually assigned a voter ID, and that would be one option for a unique identifier. But it would just be and we provide that when you register. We send a voter registration notice, and the voter ID information is included on that.
Are there other questions? Do you understand the bill?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Spruill.
I'm trying to figure, if that's the case, if you got a voter ID, then you can have a Social Security for it, and then that's three different things.
No, you would only use the voter ID or the unique identifying number, if I might, Mr. Chair. That would only be used if you didn't have a Social Security number. It applies to just about 400 registered voters in the Commonwealth to give them an opportunity to return a ballot without a witness signature. They'd get a special code, like not a Social Security number, but something to replace it with, whether it's their voter registration card number or some other number.
Senator Spruill.
Then will people be able to submit absentee online?
This has not, no, sir. We don't have absentee online, I don't believe. That's a different bill.
If they use the DOP or the Social Security number?
You can apply for an absentee ballot online, but that's not what this bill's about. It's about the actual return of the ballot in the envelope that you put it in.
Thank you.
Are there those who would like to speak in favor of the bill? 3 minutes aside.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to speak in favor of this bill.
Okay.
Thank you.
Senator Chase is in favor of the bill. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Deb Wake, League of Women Voters of Virginia. The League supports this bill, although we contend that no witness is required to verify the voter's identity on absentee ballots because many voters living alone do not have ready access to a witness or have other reasons such as health to avoid contact with others. There are also numerous safeguards in place to ensure that the ballot is sent to and returned by the voter. During the health emergency, the witness requirement was waived and no notable problems ensued. This bill leaves the witness signatures an option but provides common sense alternatives, allowing the voter to provide the required information. We support this bill.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir, you.
James Hill with Fairfax County. For the reasons delineated by the other speakers, we support the bill.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we've got some people in the virtual world who support the bill. Okay, Paul Lott. Now, the last couple times you were here, you didn't unmute or something. Are you out there? Paul Lott. Going once. Going twice. James Nix.
Mr. Chairman and Senators, my name is Jim Nix. I'm a member of the Charlottesville Electoral Board, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Virginia Electoral Board Association in favor of this bill, in support of it. We believe that election security is enhanced by offering those who vote by mail the option of putting their social security number, the final four, and their date of birth in place of the, in substitute for the witness signature. Adding this option was a key recommendation of the bipartisan Department of Elections panel last summer. And we feel it's important to note that the registrars can verify the birth date and social security number very easily in Veris with minimal effort when the ballots are received. So increased security comes at the minimum expense as far as extra burden on registrars. For these reasons, VIVA strongly supports this bill.
Thank you so much. Allison Robbins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Allison Robbins, Director of Elections, General Registrar from the County of Wise. I'm with the Voter Registrars Association, and I was a member of the Department of Elections work group that analyzed alternatives to the witness signature, and I can confirm that it was nearly a unanimous decision that this was the alternative that should be used if an alternative was adopted by the General Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I just wonder, Senator Eben, if the registrars and the electoral boards have been able to see your second substitute, or were they prepared to?
They didn't see it, but the big difference in the second substitute is just that rather than adopting through regulation that this information will be verified, it just puts it into the code.
Okay.
So the spirit of their report is encompassed in this bill.
Okay, we've got another speaker in favor, Gayleen Knoyton. Gayleen.
Hi, good afternoon. Gayleen Knoyton. I'm with the Virginia NAACP, and we support this bill for the reasons that was been said. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there people against?
It looks like Patricia from Arlington.
Oh, Patricia Marsalia wants to speak in favor of the bill. I apologize. I did not mean to cut you off. You have 31 seconds.
I'll take it. Thank you. Yes, it's wonderful. I'm proud of you all for working together. I support it.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am. Okay, now are there people opposed?
If you're in the Zoom room and would like to speak in opposition to this bill, please raise your hand electronically now. Mr. Chairman, there is no one wishing to speak in opposition.
Okay, the bill is before the committee. Second. Are there other motions? With the bill, a green vote's a vote to report, so.
Ayes 14, no 0, 1 abstention.
I would thank Senator
Bill
Spruill for the
reports.
opportunity to talk about this further on the floor.
Now, Senator Chase, you've got 3 bills left, is that correct? That is correct. Okay, the first one's 236.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the break. This bill has to do with ensuring that when we cast a ballot, casting our ballot is the core part of our constitutional republic, and it's our fiduciary responsibility to ensure that only legal, legitimate votes counts. What this bill does is it repeals the code section 24.2-7071 as it pertains to the Virginia voter ballot drop boxes, which was enacted in 2020, and through its implementation has actually cast great uncertainty on the transparency, accuracy, and validity over ballots cast in this manner. For the first time in Virginia's history, we've lost complete chain of custody between the voter and the ballot. We are inviting an opportunity for fraud. This would allow partisan groups to harvest ballots, and for those who are homebound or in nursing homes under the guise of taking them in bulk of a drop box and dropping them off. There's no witness signature, no live registrar present to answer questions or to adjudicate ballots in which they have questions. There's no requirement that only the voter can drop off their ballot. Our registrars are already overwhelmed, overworked, and this is giving them an additional responsibility where they have to monitor a voter drop-off box at their location. And, doing that for 45 days, that's another responsibility that they've had to take on. I would also comment about the tremendous cost. About $2 million for prepaid postage took place on mail-in ballots that went out this last year. And I just have great concerns that we are introducing opportunities for fraud. Now, I want to give you a highlight of some concerns that I have specific to Virginia. Based on the data file supplied to the restoration pack by the Virginia State Board of Election, the number of voters logged into the VERA system as having voted was 4,422,837. The number of ballots cast per the certified results by the State Board of Elections was 4,477,318 for the 2020 presidential election, concluding that there were actually 600,000 ballots, more ballots than voters reported. Critical Political Issues Incorporated, founded by Reagan George, identified 932,000 voters statewide that are coded as active voters in Veris but have not voted in 5 or more years. And Mr. George states these voters are intentionally not being made inactive by the State Board of Election to avoid having them removed. Mr. Chairman, on another occasion, some of these grassroots activist groups that have gone around and done a lot of the canvassing, I just want to really quickly give you one number that they're doing some canvassing here in Virginia. It's a group called Virginians for American First, or VFAF. They've been canvassing in Virginia since September of 2021, and thus far have revealed that 5.7% of the 2021 absentee ballots casted are fraudulent.
I want the number I'm interested in. You said there were 600,000 more ballots than there were voters that cast votes in 2020?
60,000.
60,000.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Piper, can you respond to that? That's a pretty serious allegation. 60,000 more vote. There were 60,000 ballots. 60,000 more ballots than voters.
Reaching out to your.
I thought she said 600,000 too, but she said 60,000.
60,000.
60,000. 60,000 more votes than there were voters.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, so this was, I believe she's referring to voteref.org. We were trying to work with them. We have still yet to figure out how they came up with that number. We did point out to them that a list of those who voted is a snapshot in time. So a list of those who voted, it would only contain current registered voters. So if somebody's dropped off the rolls for numerous reasons, they wouldn't show up. And that's...
Do your records show that there were 60,000 more ballots than voters, or frankly, any more ballots than voters?
No, sir.
Okay. Okay, I think I understand you're just trying to do what drop boxes, and that's the language
right
on lines 64 66 through 69, and over on lines 134, 135, and then down 140, 142, 143. And that, you're just trying to do away with drop boxes.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
we all understand that. I think we all understand what drop boxes are. Are there questions for Senator Chase? Are there those who would like to speak in favor of the bill? 3 minutes aside.
Bobby Thomas, Chesterfield County, and I am for the bill.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, we've got several people from the virtual world. We've got less than 3 minutes now, only but 2 minutes and 57 seconds. So there are 5 of you, and there are probably going to be more before we're done. I'd ask you to be economical with your time. The first one is Diana Howard.
Diana Howard, Chair of the Virginia Beach Tea Party, and we are in favor of the bill. Drop-off boxes, for every reason that Senator Chase gave you, is just more fraud and cheating can be done with it.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Paul Lott. Mr. Lott, 3 times before.
So I think I just figured out what the problem was. The name was wrong on the title, and so you were calling somebody else that wasn't me, but unmuting me. I'm sorry.
Well, Ms. Clark, we only can call the names that we've got. We've got Paul Lott's name. But if you're saying Paul Lott is actually Melody Clark, that's okay.
No, I'm Melody Clark, and I'm in favor of this bill. We do support it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. La Shuping.
Hi, I'm in favor of this bill. I support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very
Governor.
much, ma'am. That's the 3rd favorite. That's it.
Yeah.
Kun Wan.
I am supporting this bill.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Shalong Strauder, and I apologize.
Charlene Stauder from Fairfax County. I fully support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Teresa Langkow.
Hi, this is Teresa Land Jill, like Jack and Jill, and I am for this bill. Very much so. It's my favorite bill, having worked the polls. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jonathan LaRue.
Hello, thank you very much. I would just like to let you know that there is actual numbers, and it's Chris Piper's numbers that show that those are inaccuracies. In the registration turnout statistics report, there's 2,687,000 absentee ballots, according to Chris's. That's one of Chris's data files on the Virginia website. There's also the 2020 November general election CSV file, which shows a different number, which shows 2,831,767. There's the FOIA CSV that we got, which shows a different number, which is 2,829,000 and change. There's another number for the daily absentee list. If you actually add up all the numbers in the daily absentee list, you get 2,826,484. These are all data files directly given to us by the Virginia Department of Elections, and they don't agree.
Well, thank you very much. Vic Nichols is the next speaker, and I would remind the group that you've got less than 50 seconds now. Total.
Thank you. Thank you. I have been at the polls where we have had to sit there and had groups that were officially moved because they kept standing in front of where the box was that they were supposed to drop off. That was very questionable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Dr. Wheeler.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My concern for drop boxes is the lack of security. Despite the fact that the code requires that they be monitored, they are not all monitored, or the tapes are erased. It would be a very tragic thing for someone to hand deliver a whole box of ballots to a drop box, only to have that box destroyed by vandals, which has occurred in past elections, specifically in the city of Richmond and other localities. These ballots are not secure, despite what we would like to believe. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, we're over time, so I would just ask you to identify yourself and tell us whether you represent a group. David Lopez.
David Lopez, Fairfax County, Virginia, election officer, and I'm in favor of this bill.
Thank you very much. Patricia Marcelia.
I witnessed a box being snatched and not turned into the precinct director. 2020 election. Oh, yes, I did.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Are there those who would like to speak in opposition to the bill?
If you're in the Zoom room and would like to speak in opposition of the bill, please raise your hand now.
Got a couple of people in this room. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Deb Wake, League of Women Voters of Virginia. Last year, the League testified in support of SB 1245 and HB 1888, which codified the placement of drop-off locations. We continue to support drop boxes as a service to voters. Not all voters cast absentee ballots by mail or in person. Some desire the insurance and timeliness of hand delivery. Some lack a residential address or reliable mail service. Some voters do not have stamps. Some vote in person during polling hours due to family responsibilities or illness, and they can't vote during regular hours. Dropbox still allows those voters to participate in our democratic process and know their ballots are secure. Detailed guidance governs permissible containers. All drop-off locations must be under either physical or video surveillance constantly. Ballots are collected daily by authorized individuals only, with strict provisions to safeguard the ballots at all times and maintain the proper chain of custody. No ballot can be counted unless it is inside the security envelope provided. So once the ballot is processed, the voter cannot vote again. They're a great convenience to voters, and we support this.
Thank you very much. Yes, yes, sir. You're.
James Hill, Fairfax County. Mr. Chairman, Fairfax County opposes this legislation. Over 19,000 voters availed themselves of this service in the 2021 election. We continually get more requests for new drop-off locations. I reiterate, I echo all the comments about the security measures in place. I also want to note, as you all know, that Nova has a particular traffic issue, which makes it challenging for voters to get to polling locations on time. Thank you.
Gotcha. Okay, we've got some people in the virtual world who want to use the last minute and 20 seconds. Gayleen Knoyton.
Hi, Gayleen Knoyton with the Virginia NAACP. We want to expand access to cast a vote, not create barriers with skewed, unfounded fraud. Thank you.
Okay, Mary McDaniel.
Mary McDaniel, Fairfax, Virginia, and I echo what Gayleen just said.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am. Okay, do you want to wrap it up, Senator?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I appreciate the sentiment. I do believe that we want to try to increase access for voters. I'm all for it. However, I think this is a step too far. Very concerned about the lack of chain of custody, the lack of security, and also the ability for the box itself to be destroyed or mishandled. Someone could light a match and just throw it right there in the ballot box. By having that person there, they're able to adjudicate and answer any questions that the person has. Not having, so we've got 45 days we can vote in person right now. So surely that person can hopefully make it there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Their bills are aimed at changing that 45 days too. So we'll see. Okay, the bill's before the committee.
Move to report.
Got a motion and a report and a second. Is there a substitute motion?
Substitute motion to PBI.
Substitute motion to PBI and a second. Substitute motion takes precedence. All in favor of the substitute motion will vote yea.
Ayes 9, noes 6.
Okay. Your next bill, Senator Chase, is Senate Bill 460. Jill, do you want to do your bill today?
Doesn't matter, it's up to you.
Okay.
I've got two, we can put them until next week.
Mr. Chairman, this is Senate Bill 460, and this is simply an effort just to make sure that we have we have absolute deadlines for our ballots, and really we're trying to place the responsibility on the voter instead of the postal service or something else. You know, in life we have deadlines. We have bills to pay. We have to show up to work in time. We need a deadline for those ballots, and under this bill, it removes the provision of law requiring an absentee ballot that is returned to the general registrar after the close of polls on Election Day to be counted if it is received before noon on the third day after the election and is postmarked on or before the date of the election to be counted if the voter is found entitled to vote. The bill does not affect the exception for a voter covered who was not sent a ballot in a timely manner and whose ballot arrives after the close of polls. Mr. Chairman, we have to have deadlines for bills. And did I have a question, sir?
You want to let her present?
I'm sorry, I apologize. Let her finish.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Really, that's all this does, Mr. Chairman. It just creates an absolute deadline for this bill here in the Senate of Virginia. We have deadlines. While I do agree that we should make it as easy as we can for voters to have access to voting, we must have deadlines for voting. There needs to be a final deadline in which all ballots are in or they don't count. We shouldn't relegate that responsibility to the post office, and if the responsibility of the voter to ensure their sacred ballot makes it to the registrar's office and in time, and extending the deadline opens the door to nefarious activities, and that we must not allow. Thank you.
Senator Spruill's got a question.
Yes, sir.
To the gentleman,
To Mr. Piper.
yes, Mr. Piper, please, thank you.
She's probably just down in the front row.
How you doing, sir?
Good. Thank
Right
you, Senator.
now, as far as the absentee ballots, right now, what is the deadline right now?
The deadline for an absentee ballot has to be postmarked by Election Day, and it will be counted as long as it's received in the office of the general registrar by noon on the Friday following the election.
So, for an example, let's say if the deadline's the 23rd, for an example, and when you get it after the 23rd. So you're saying if it's postmarked the 23rd, it's counted?
So
I'll just use that for an example.
Right, Mr. Chair. So on election day, so this year we had election day on November 2nd. As long as the ballot is postmarked by November 2nd, and it's received by noon on, in this case, November 5th, then it is counted and applied to the election.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Spruill.
So the postmark is in the post office. So I assume they stamped the date. So you're going by that date from the post office, and that date has to be posted by the same day as the election.
Mr. Chairman, yes, that is correct.
Okay. Now, so once they post it after the election, then the mail. We have a problem with the mail right now. So how many days it is posted on that same day? Then what happens if you don't get it on that deadline that you're talking about after it has been posted on the same day?
It doesn't count.
So, Mr. Chairman, it would not, if it doesn't arrive by noon, it doesn't count. So if it's delivered at 2 p.m., it wouldn't count.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, Senator Chase, they say, what did Senator Hashmi say the other day? Consistency is the hobgoblin of small minds. And I'm not consistent all the time, but my notes indicate that this portion of the code section was enacted in 2020 in a bill that Senator Reeves carried that you co-sponsored.
Mr. Chairman, what I would tell you is that I have a question that I would like to ask Chris Piper to answer for us.
Okay.
Because this is what's really concerning me and a problem that I've recently realized. A lot of times the Postal Service does not stamp the mail with a date on it. I was really surprised for this myself, but I get my own mail, and it is not always stamped. So my question to Mr. Piper is, when we're dealing with ballots, I know my letters in my Senate box aren't always stamped with a date on it. So my question is every single ballot that is mailed in stamped with an actual time stamp?
The way I read this code section, it has to be, or you're not going to count it.
Right, Mr. Chairman. So to respond, if a ballot is not postmarked, either through an error or an issue with the post office, or it's unreadable, the general registrar, the State Board of Elections' own regulation prohibits that ballot from being counted.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll have to follow up with you on the bill because I've introduced and sponsored a lot of it. I'm sure Senator Reeves was a patron. It was good.
Senate Bill 455 in the 2020 session. Senator Reeves carried it. Senate Bill 455.
I don't remember the number. What was that bill?
It was to make sure that we got overseas military ballots.
Yeah. Right.
Came in. I think
And I
I an
support
extra
that.
3 days.
Well,
And I do support
that was the idea, to allow them to postmark the ballot up to Election Day. So we understand this repeals that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we can make an exception for military.
Equal protection says we got to treat everybody the same.
Well, you're right. So let's make it a deadline and be done with it.
Okay. Are there questions for Senator Chase? Senator McClellan.
Yeah, I guess it's more of a comment. I mean, if someone has
has put their ballot in the mail and it is postmarked by Election Day, they've met the deadline. Just like if you have put your tax return in the mail and it is postmarked by April 15th, you've met the deadline. We have given a grace period because it is not within the voter's control what happens with the mail. So I think what this bill is doing is punishing the voter who has met the deadline for delays caused by the Postal Service that are beyond their control, which, as Senator Reeves has alluded to, will disproportionately impact our military.
Mr. Chairman, Senator McClellan, I actually agree with your statement, and to follow through with that, if you'll listen carefully to my concern, is that not all of the mail, I mail my ballot in. If you hear what he just said, Chris Piper said, they do not count the vote if it's not stamped. And so really a good question would be, how many of the ballots that are mailed in are not stamped and not counted? Because I would want to make sure their vote counted.
Mr. Chair.
Senator McClellan.
Your bill doesn't solve that problem if it's a problem, but every letter that is put in the U.S. Postal Service is stamped. If you receive letters in your mailbox that don't have it, they probably did not go through the U.S. Postal Service to get there.
Mr. Chairman, I would encourage the patron. I get my own mail, and I will tell you there is not a date stamp on a lot of the mail. There's markings, but it's not necessarily a date stamp. And what I would say further is, what I'm doing is trying to change the mindset of the voter that is their responsibility to make sure that they physically get into the office so they're not disenfranchised.
But again, Mr. Chair,
if for instance, if their ballot is not marked by the Postal Service. So I think we're in agreement. We're just seeing it from a different way.
I don't think so. If your concern is that someone has put a ballot in the mail and it wasn't postmarked, your bill doesn't fix that problem, because under current law, it won't be counted, and if your bill passes, it won't be counted.
What it does is it puts the onus on the voter to make sure that it definitely gets to the registrar's office in time.
But, Mr. Chair.
Senator McClellan.
And I don't want to get into a running debate, but I want to be clear. When a person puts something in the U.S. Postal Service, they have no control over whether the Postal Service postmarks it or not. So you are, in effect, punishing a voter who has done what they're supposed to do by the deadline for the failure of the U.S. Postal Service to either postmark it or deliver it on time.
Mr. Chairman, what I am trying to say is, and a good example is, if let's just use a different scenario. Let's just say that my rent is due on the 1st of the month, and I mail it in, but my landlord does not get the check by the due date. He didn't get it in time, so I either get a late fee or I get evicted. Hopefully not. My whole point is that if I know that's the situation up front, as the renter, I'm going to go hand deliver my check and make sure that my landlord receives that payment. And I'm not going to rely on the Postal Service, because as the Federal Postal Service said this year, right before the election, it was a month before the election, there was a public statement made by the Federal Post Office that they were slower than normal, not to count on the Postal Service for timely and quick delivery. It was, you can do a Google search on it to find that statement by the Federal Post Office. And my whole point is, we have to count the ballots. At some point, there has to be a cutoff. And my concern, Mr. Chairman, is, and this is something new that I've just discovered in this whole process this year of examining what's going on with our mail, is that we cannot count on there being a date on our mail. That's all I'm saying.
But if there's not a date on the mail, they can't count it.
And then the voter is disenfranchised.
Voter is disenfranchised. Or if it comes later than noon on Friday.
And that's what I'm concerned about.
Well, that's a question for the post office.
And I want to take that responsibility away from the post office.
Okay, let's do 3 minutes aside. people that need to speak in favor of this bill, either in this room or in the virtual room? Yes, ma'am. Come up.
Bobby Thomas, Chesterfield County. And as Amanda said earlier, there's 45 days. I think they can get it in the mail in plenty of time for it to be counted. I'm for this bill.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, in the virtual world, Melody Clark. I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm in favor of this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. And I've also got Paul Lott registered, but Paul Lott was Melody Clark before. So is it the real Paul Lott?
It's a shadow. It's a shadow.
It's a shadow, the shadow. Okay, La Chupang.
Yeah, this is my favorite. I'm in the favor of this bill.
Okay.
I support this bill.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Elizabeth Sykes.
I'm sorry, I was trying to put my hand down. I'm actually opposed to the bill, so if you want me to.
No, well, that's okay. Well, we just, well, you just.
I just think that we keep taking too much away from the federal government, which is the highest court of the land, and we're kind of like giving too much power.
Okay. Michael Hirsch. Thank you, ma'am. Michael Hirsch. Mr. Hirsch, are you out there?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had difficulty finding my mute button. I apologize. I want to thank you all for working so well together today. I support 460, and I think that we should make it equally an opportunity for those who go in person voting or return their ballot before the election closes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Chris Holmes.
Hi, I support this bill. I have an actual envelope here from the Bible League that has no postage date on it. And I received it in the mail. It hasn't been opened yet. I just ran out to the mailbox to get that. Ease of voting is a great idea. Voting is our most sacred right. It's even more important than the right to earn a living and the right to own property. But without the right to have legalized voting, then we throw away our rights and we end up with dictatorships. And I've moved that we should be supporting all of this integrity bills. The pretense that voter integrity somehow prevents people from voting is nonsense. And we need to take care of the integrity first so that other people don't feel disenfranchised, so they have faith in our voting system.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, the names keep adding up. Vic Nichols.
Thank you. The ABC store closes at 9 o'clock on Sunday at 6 p.m. They don't sit there and let people in. Why should you sit there and get a chance to vote? Get off your butt, put it in. It's not that hard. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Okay, Teresa Langau. Vic Nichols just spoke, didn't she? Now we're up to Teresa Langau.
It's Langell.
I apologize. Butcher.
Okay. I am for this. I'm in favor of this bill. And I would say that I'm kind of in agreement when you have 45 days to vote. Some of the responsibility does lie on the voter as a responsible citizen. And also, I have a problem in the mail with if the party that you're voting with is identified on the outside of the envelope. I mean, somebody could just choose not to stamp your thing. So.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Now, we're out of time. I just want you to identify yourself, tell us where you're from, and whether you represent a group. The next speaker is David Lopez.
Yes, sir. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm a Fairfax County voter and election officer, and I'm in favor of this bill.
Thank you very much. Jonathan LaRoe.
Thank you very much. As an election officer as well, this will make it easier for election officers and also, cause less complexity. I am for this bill.
Thank you very much. Chantel Cooper.
Hello, my name is Chantel Cooper. I am a citizen of Loudoun County, Virginia, and I support this bill.
Thank you very much. Okay, speakers in opposition, we've heard from one. Are there others?
If you are in the Zoom room and wish to speak in opposition, please raise your hand electronically now.
Yes, ma'am.
Deb Wake, League of Women Voters of Virginia. We oppose this bill for obvious reasons. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Are there others? There are not others. Do you want to close it out, or?
Actually, I'd like to have Chris Piper to close it out with a question here. And my question, Mr. Piper, and I apologize to put you on the spot here, is if you could give us definitive numbers from the State Board of Elections on the number of mail-in ballots that have received in total, and how many of those did not have a date stamp on them for the last election, for instance.
Off the top of my head, I don't have that number. I do know, and I believe off the top of my head, in 2020 there were 5,000 ballots that came in between the close of the election and Friday at noon, and those were counted. But again, the regulation requires that anything not including or that does not have a stamp or is unreadable cannot be counted.
So how many of those were not time-stamped?
Unfortunately, Mr. Chairman, we don't track that in Veris, so we don't have the ability to pull that number.
Hold on, Mr. Piper.
Senator Reeves.
I'm curious, because one of the reasons we put the legislation is because we heard that overseas ballots weren't getting counted, and we heard testimony, I believe it was from the Registrar of Fairfax County, who has Fort Belvoir there. How many of those were from APOs? Because APOs are marked when you get a military ballot. They're hammered out when these guys send them back, guys and gals overseas. Of those 5,000, how many were military ballots?
Mr. Chair, I don't have that information off the top of my head, but I will certainly email it to
Mr.
you.
Chairman, by next committee meeting, can we hear from them?
Well, can you have it by next week?
I'll do whatever I can to make sure I get that information for you, because it's important information.
You know, I've had two of the members of the committee have said Gayleen Canoyton has emailed or texted them and says she's in the room. Is she in the room? Gayleen?
Mr. Chairman, she should be able to speak now.
Thank you very much. Gayleen Canoyton with the Virginia State Conference, NAACP. We oppose this bill. We want to increase access, and there is a deadline on noon on Friday. And also, a person who cast their vote on the election day takes a chance for it to get there by noon on Friday. So that's their choice. But we want to expand the vote and not create barriers. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator
may I say something real briefly? I think the reason that we passed Senator Reeves' bill 2 years ago, 40-0 through the Senate, is a military vote, and not just overseas. I have a great deal of military in my district, and so they can be deployed across the country, and so we wanted to make sure their votes counted. So I think that's why we unanimously supported it.
My notes show that there was not a single no vote.
It was 40-0.
In 2020, and Senator Chase was a co-patron of the bill.
I'm all for our military, Mr. Chairman.
But, Mr. Chair.
Senator Peake.
I have a question, patron or chair or council. It looks like we got double negative. I am just to be clear, is the purpose of this bill to say that a mailed-in ballot that is not received by election day doesn't count?
That's correct. It's to have an absolute deadline for
Of
all
election day.
ballots.
Of
as
election
day.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, in 2020, the legislation that passed said as long as it was postmarked
before
by
the
election day
election,
and received by
by
noon
Friday,
on Friday after the election,
Tuesday
it
to
would
Friday.
count.
And this is doing away, it has to be in by Tuesday.
Has to be in by Tuesday.
Has to be in by election day.
Okay.
Okay, was there anything you wanted to say to close it out, or do you think we've
Well,
talked?
I mean, one final thing, and I'm not going to impede on your time like as much as I already have already today, and I want to thank y'all for your patience and endurance today with all these bills. But
You still got one to go.
Yes, well, I do. I do. You know, one of the concerns that I hear from my residents, my voters back home, they want an absolute deadline because they want to take away the appearance that people are looking at how many ballots they need left in order to change the election results. This just takes away that concern that we already know how many votes we have. Now we're going to see how many votes we need to get a better result. That's just how some people.
I don't think that. I don't know. I can't imagine the only instance that I can think of that would play up to that would be when President Trump called that voter registrar in Georgia and said, "I need 11,000 votes. That's all I need." And that was after he'd already seen the result. With the bills before the committee. Okay, is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, before we just make that vote, can I speak to the bill just a second?
Yes, sir.
I would just like to say, look, part of the other reason that we said the military is because usually after the election, you still have provisional ballots to count. And so the registrars are all still working on these things. And we really don't have, we might know on election day the total, but they're still counting provisional ballots. And so that 3 days was designed so because we heard the testimony, you all heard it too, that we had a lot of these military ballots that were coming in after election day. And we tried to figure out what that process was. And since we hadn't finalized, typically all the registrar's offices would have those provisional ballots counted and everything else wrapped up by Friday. And that was the decision, if I remember logic serves.
Usually the canvases are done by Friday, and that's why that time was chosen. Okay, we had a motion. Was there a second? Okay, are there other motions? That's right. Motions to pass the bill by indefinitely. Okay, all in favor of PBI will vote yay.
Ayes 9, noes 2, 3 abstentions.
Okay, Senator Chase, you've got one more bill, and I'm going to do one bill after that, and then there's a bill I've got with Senator Souter on, and we're still trying to figure that out, so I'm going to ask that those bills go till next week. Senator Vogel's got a couple of bills where I've already talked with her, and those bills are going to go by next week. So you've got the next to last bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate your
and that's
patience.
552, is that
This
correct?
is Senate Bill 552, and this is basically trying to take the issue that at hand here that we're trying to take up is minimize the number of mail-in votes that come in. I hear it all across the state of Virginia that the concern is the increased risk of fraud, the increased risk of moving parts, something going wrong when we mail in ballots, and the desire to create more accountability whenever we have a mail-in ballot. So what we're doing basically is we're going back to prior to 2020. We're adding back the list of excuses that we had to vote absentee. We're adding those back, and then we're also requiring a notary signature to ensure the person is who they say they are, and then match that against the registrar's office with a matching signature.
Okay, Senator Chase, it's not just absentee votes by mail, it's all absentee votes.
Yes.
You're just requiring it, you're taking away no excuse absentee vote, you're repealing that.
It's just for the mail-in vote.
Just for
there's
mail-in
no
votes.
So whenever you vote in person, it does not require an excuse. You can still vote in person, no excuse, and the mail-in ballot is the only one that would require the excuse.
Okay, do you understand the bill? Are there questions for Senator Chase?
Yes.
Senator Peake.
Mr. Chair, did you say you're requiring a notary on mail-in absentee?
Mail-in absentee.
Have to be notarized.
Correct.
Is that inconsistent with the bill we just passed? Yeah. Okay, if we understand the bill, I would ask 3 minutes aside. If there are the people want to speak in favor of this bill, you've got 3 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, could I just add 3 more little
Okay,
facts in
sure,
there?
sure.
Just to put this into perspective, because I know there's a gentleman here from Fairfax, and so I really want to make sure that they're aware of this. There was an election integrity group, and this is specific to Fairfax County. Mail-in ballots, they are the ballots that are most vulnerable to being altered, stolen, or forged. Mail-in ballots, remember, also have a higher rejection rate than votes cast in person. Everything from signatures on the ballots not matching the signatures on voters on file to ballots not complying with the technical rules that apply to absentee ballots. Mail-in ballots just have a higher rejection rate and occur because there's no election official in people's homes to answer their questions. At polling locations, by contrast, election officials can try to remedy any problems a voter encounters. We had issues in Fairfax County with absentee votes. There was a lawsuit, in fact, an election integrity group, the Public Interest Local Foundation, filed a lawsuit in motion for an injunction against members of the Fairfax County Board of Elections and the Fairfax County General Registrar. And the lawsuit explained that the Fairfax County is violating Virginia law by accepting and approving applications for absentee and mail-in ballots that do not include the last 4 digits of the applicant's social security number as required by Virginia statutes. The second case, mid-October, the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors asked Governor Ralph Northam to allow them to waive the witness signature requirement for absentee ballots. And the list goes on. And then you know about the Virginia Democratic Party filed a lawsuit in the last election, the United States Postal Service, complaining about a delay of 300,000 mail-in votes just days before election officials and mainstream media outlets began talking about the scenario resulting of that was in the gubernatorial election. And then also, just to jog y'all's memory, one last thing. We had in Fairfax County, 500,000 Virginians received vote by mail-in applications with the wrong return address from a nonprofit group, the Center for Voter Information. It was a major printing error, if you guys remember correctly. So all I'm trying to say is the mailing, and it's so much better to vote in person, and we get that not everybody can do that, but we've got a 45-day window as it stands today. Let's encourage people to vote in person. If you have to vote mail-in, there's certainly opportunities to do so. But I think we as the General Assembly should encourage people to do so in person just because of all the issues that we've historically seen with the mail-in ballots, thousands of ballots, even to the point where you've got the Democratic Party filing lawsuits.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Are there questions for Senator Chase? Are there, well then I want 3 minutes on each side. And are there people in this room or the Zoom room? And I'm Teresa Langau. That's probably the closest I've.
It's Langell, like
Langell.
Jack and Jill.
Langell. I got you.
There you
I
go.
apologize. Langell.
And I would like to say I'm in favor of this bill completely. And we received 4 some kind of ballots at our house here for no reason because we go and vote in person always. So that was questionable to us. It's like, why are we getting these? So I think the mail-in just leaves a lot of confusion, a lot of room for nefarious activity, and just we want to protect our vote and our transition of power the best that we can. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, Vic Nichols. Vic Nichols, I know you're out there.
Sorry, I had a technical problem. I agree with keeping ballots as safe as possible, and that's all Senator Chase has been trying to do. I'd appreciate it if the group would take a look at that from that perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, Patricia Marcelia.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yes, ma'am.
So much. Yes, I agree that we need to work on voter integrity, especially in Arlington, where we're commingled with DC and Maryland, and we're very vulnerable to people from out of state voting in Arlington unchecked. And I did receive an unsolicited ballot at my house too. I did not appreciate it because I always go and vote in person.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Shailene Stouter, and I apologize, I've messed up your name again. Ms. Stouter, are you out there?
Mr. Chairman, she has dropped out of the Zoom.
Okay, Jonathan LaRoe.
Hello, yes, this is Jonathan LaRoe, Haymarket, Virginia. I do approve this bill. I think we should reinstitute having to have an excuse to have mail-in absentee ballots.
Thank you, sir. Ken Lubeck.
Ken Lubeck, Virginia Beach, nonpartisan IT organization. I support this, and I also would support, just as an example, the nonprofit that sent out the applications for mail-in ballots. They created a list of bounce backs. That list should be provided to the general public to know what happened with those, because there's just too many opportunities to do all kinds of things with mail-in ballots, as says Jimmy Carter. Thank you.
Chris Holmes, please. Chris Holmes, are you out there? You got enough time to identify yourself and tell us where you're from, give us the name of the group you represent. Chris Holmes, are you out there?
Mr. Chairman, he has fallen out of the Zoom.
Okay, Diana Howard.
Chair of the Virginia Beach Tea Party, we are in favor of the bill.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Elizabeth Sykes. Elizabeth Sykes.
Hello, it's actually Heather Mitchell. I support this bill.
So Heather Mitchell is Elizabeth Sykes. Okay, I appreciate you. An alias. Okay, David Lopez.
Shadow supporters.
Yes, sir. Thank you again. David Lopez, Fairfax County election officer, in support of this bill.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Okay, 3 minutes for people that are opposed. Are there the people that are opposed?
Mr. Chairman, James He with Fairfax County. Among many of the issues with this legislation, one of the things that we don't quite understand is that if you're required to use a notary to witness you filling out your ballot, why would you then need to actually have your signature verified? Because you already have to sign and present an ID when you go to a notary. So we ask that you oppose this bill.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Deb Wake, League of Women Voters of Virginia. We strongly oppose this bill. The requirement to have an excuse to vote absentee serves no purpose other than to make it harder for registered voters to cast their ballots. Early voting allows voters to cast when they can. Mail voting turnout has soared since Virginia abandoned the requirement for an excuse to the benefit of all Virginians. The bill would substitute a notary for the current witness requirement, and the League has successfully litigated to have the requirement of the witness waived during the pandemic. Not having a witness allowed voters, especially older voters who live alone, to vote safely. No issues resulted from the lack of witness signature. Requiring a notary to observe the voter completing the ballot to sign would place a greater hardship on the voters in terms of cost and time and would nullify the secrecy of the ballot. Any provision in this bill would needlessly impose signature matching, a complicated process Virginia has never instituted and which could disenfranchise voters. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, do you want to speak or do you want me to finish these?
Finish those up.
Okay, Gayleen Knoyton.
Hi, this is Gayleen Knoyton with the Virginia NAACP. We oppose this bill. We want to expand access and not create barriers, especially having a notary. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Mary McDaniel.
Hi, Mary McDaniel, Officer of Election in Fairfax City. I am very much opposed to this bill. Requiring a notary makes people pay to vote. Signature matching is insecure. Requiring absentee ballots by mail to have an excuse is going to be enormously unpopular. Being able to vote without an excuse was incredibly popular and took a tremendous amount of pressure off of Election Day, which as an officer of election, I really appreciated. I'm adamantly opposed to this bill.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Sheba Williams.
Yes, good afternoon. Sheba Williams, Richmond, Virginia, ED of No Left Turns and election officer. We're taking accessibility away from people with disabilities, college students like my own children, people who work long shifts and commute, military who are overseas who don't have access to notaries. And now we're requiring people who have health issues, like individuals who contract COVID in the last days, to give an excuse for why they can't show up to the ballot. We strongly oppose this bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Are there others there? If they're not, Senator Peake has something to say.
Well, and I actually had a question for Mr. Piper. I know he hadn't answered enough of my questions yet, if I could. So I have to clear up on these mail-in ballots, and I've heard people testified to it. I've heard it. I've had people tell me that they got actual absentee ballots in the mail that they did not request. And these are Democrat, Ivy League educated doctor, and my wife says, yes, Mark, you moron. She knows the difference in a ballot and a ballot application. She swears it was a ballot. And I've had numerous Republicans tell me they have received not absentee ballot applications, but ballots. Can ballots be sent in the mail if they are not requested?
Mr. Chairman, in short, absolutely not.
All right. And then follow-up question.
Yes, Senator Peake.
Mr. Piper. When we send out an absentee ballot, or you send out an absentee ballot that has been requested, does it have a code, a number, or what do you call it? scan sheet, whatever a code on it that tracks to that particular voter?
Mr. Chairman, no. Each ballot is required to have the seal of the electoral board on the ballot. The ballots have to be printed in the presence, or printed by the vendor, and there's several steps along the way for chain of custody I could get into. We'd be here for a very long time,
but it does not have a code that tracks it, correct?
No, sir.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Piper, and speak very briefly to the bill.
Yes.
I have serious concerns about the notary part of the bill and the no excuse. I think the no excuse is working, but I have enough concerns about what we're doing with our absentee ballots that should it make it out of this committee, which I'm sure it probably will, that I would like to make some changes on those issues.
Okay, Senator Chase, could you wrap up in a minute or two, do you think?
Sure. Listen, I just think we have a lot of problems with mail-in ballots, and we have plenty of time to vote in person to get people there. They go to the grocery store. They go other places. We can get to the election polling places. If we make it a priority, we can get there. That is the intent of this bill, is to decrease the risk of fraud and to increase the probability that we will restore confidence in our elections and eliminate all these issues we've had with mail-in voters, with mail-in ballots.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank
the
you.
bill's before the committee.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Bell.
Mr. Chairman, with all respect, I have witnessed one of my previous opponents sit outside the voting location and coach people on what was a good fake reason to use to do an early voting back in the day when we had these same 12. My district is filled with people with tough commutes, and the 11 of 13 hours on item 9 is a difficult thing. Particularly, often people don't know how many hours they're going to be the day before the election day. Sometimes a weather event will happen, and it will make it longer. They couldn't certify in advance that it's going to be 11 of 13 hours. We have 27 states with no excuse early voting today, and 7 that are all mail-in. I think, frankly, no excuse is better than coaching people literally to vote fraudulently, which I would never do. So with that, I make a motion to PBI this bill.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Bell, I agree with you on in-person voting. There would still be, for the 45-day period, there's no excuse. That would only be for the mail-in votes.
Okay,
just to be clear.
Got a motion and a second. Are there other motions? Well, then, if you vote green, you're voting to PBI the bill. Okay, thank you, Senator Chase.
Ayes 9, noes 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just a quick question, if I could. When I was attending the last Privileges and Elections Committee, my photo ID bill came up, and Senator Obenshain said he did not want to roll the bill, and so I didn't get an opportunity to speak on that bill.
Well, then we did roll it in.
Yes, but I didn't get to speak on it. So I just wondered if I was able to speak on it next week.
Well, I think that we've already heard the bill. We've already disposed of it. That's the problem.
I just wanted to see if there was an opportunity.
I appreciate that. I'm sorry. I wish you had jumped up last week, but
I would have if Senator Obenshain had not denied my request to roll on the bill, but I understand.
It was a difficult situation. I understand.
Thank you.
Well, the one bill left that I'd like to take up, and Senator, it's your favorite bill. It's SJ 57. It's the last of the Northam appointees.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think it had any cabinet secretaries on it.
Doesn't have any cabinet secretaries.
I read through it. That was my only, that was the reason for my voice and a concern about the previous ones.
Has everybody had a chance to review it, SJR 57? Do I have a motion to report? Okay. Got a motion and a second. Are there other motions? If you vote green, you vote to report. Okay.
Ayes 14, no 0.
The committee will rise. The bill's reported. The committee will rise. All right.